Chapter 447. When the old tree demon Gui Shanyu passed by Yang Chen smiled and reminded the old tree demon, "Old rules, leave their bodies to me." The body of the Deshang stage master was now the best tonic for the weak blood phantom vine in Yang Chen's medicine garden. No way, in the case of the loss of a large part of the main root and the main vine, it was already a great luck that they could still live. Without hundreds of years of nourishment, it was impossible to recover. The passage into the villa has been opened, and a large number of masters have already entered. Yang Chen now does not have to worry about being discovered. He can rest assured and boldly absorb the thunder and lightning power of the 7-star thunder formation here. Unlike when he was sneaky, Yang Chen had to carefully control the direction of the 500 thunder pomegranates and absorb the spiritual power according to the need. Now there was no such scruples at all. He let go of the control of those fruits and absorbed them wantonly. The sound of fighting has begun to be heard in the villa. In the previous years of arrangements, Chunyang Palace has confirmed that all the masters of the Deshang stage in the background are in seclusion in the villa. The high-level executives who usually take care of the business are also concentrated in the villa, and none of them ran away. The power of several times the other party rushed into the villa like a crushing force. There was no one who was unprepared, and they still had an absolute advantage. The other party was caught off guard and shocked that the 7-star thunder formation did not work at all. Under the shock, they did not organize a decent resistance at all. All the people below the Deshang stage were killed in the first moment. No one would keep these people. Since Chunyang Palace has spent such a big price, they would never allow the high level to escape. The 9 masters of the Deshang stage began to carefully find the place where the masters of the Deshang stage were in seclusion. Among the 100,000 mountains, few people would believe others, and the same was true for these masters of the Deshang stage. The only expert who was not in seclusion was already fighting with Elder Hua and the others. The place where they were in seclusion was full of restrictions and various formations. After a while, Yang Chen heard a huge rumbling sound, which should be the sound of a group of masters frantically destroying various restrictions. For the time being, this had nothing to do with Yang Chen. Yang Chen was a junior in the foundation establishment stage. This level of battle basically had nothing to do with him. Even if Yang Chen had the power to protect himself, Shi Kuei and Xie Sha still pretended to stay by his side and pretended to protect him. No one felt that there was anything wrong. Protecting Yang Chen also meant protecting the future questioning inner heart pill. Moreover, Yang Chen had also contributed greatly in this battle. If the 7-star sky thunder formation was forcefully broken, it was very likely that the people in the villa would be on guard. It would not be as easy to attack as it was now. Yang Chen was currently crazily absorbing the power of lightning, crazily ripening the pomegranate tree. In addition to ripening the pomegranate tree, he also needed to refine the purified bottle medicine garden. If he missed this opportunity, there wouldn't be another one like this. In the future, it wouldn't be so easy for him to have such an opportunity to absorb the power of lightning without considering the consequences. In the beginning, Yang Chen only opened a passage about 10 feet wide above the huge 7-star thunder formation. Now, he was planning to absorb all the lightning power in the 7-star sky thunder formation. Under the reckless absorption and ripening of Yang Chen, the pomegranate tree began to grow wildly. Just like when the purified bottle of the medicine garden was sacrificially refined by Yang Chen, the absorption of a large amount of spiritual power would cause all the medicinal materials in the medicine garden to add many years. The same was true for the absorption of the power of lightning. In fact, the power of lightning was originally of the first wood attribute, but the outbreak was somewhat intense. This crazy absorption of the power of lightning was mainly to ripen the pomegranate tree, but the purified bottle medicine garden was also tempered by the powerful first wood attribute. When the passage was just broken, Yang Chen certainly couldn't pay attention to this. Now there was no need for Yang Chen to do it again. Yang Chen certainly would not let go of this opportunity. After greeting Shi Kuei and Xie Sha, he let them pay a little attention and began to use the power of lightning released by the thunder pomegranate to sacrifice the purified bottle of the medicine garden. The heavenly spirit treasure refining secret art refining the purified bottle medicine garden was only the first layer, and it was still refined once with the fifth earth true essence. After the last time he had the seventh metal true essence, he refined the dome hall. Of course, it was necessary to carefully sacrifice the medicine garden itself. The power of lightning of the seven-star thunder formation could not be directly applied, but with the thunder pomegranate, there was no such problem. The power of lightning, after Yang Chen's simple refining, could control the release of the power of lightning at will. Just to complete this process, the power of lightning belonged to the pure power of the first wood. Yang Chen carefully used the first wood spirit power in his body to control the thunder pomegranate to release the power of lightning, according to the second layer of the heavenly spirit treasure refining secret art. He began to sacrifice. Although Yang Chen's own refining of the profound spirit furnace has reached the level of the heavenly spirit fifth layer and the earth fiend seventh layer, the level of the medicine garden itself was too high, and Yang Chen could only carry out the sacrificial refining of the heavenly spirit treasure refining secret art in the second layer. No one would have thought that when several masters of the Deshang stage were fighting fiercely in the villa over there, Yang Chen was leisurely carrying out the sacrificial refining of his own magic weapon, using the power of lightning of the opponent's seven-star thunder formation. The pure power of lightning poured into the purified bottle of the medicine garden, but the purified bottle itself did not seem to have much change except for the increase in spiritual power. Even if the power of the first wood was a lot purer, there was no essential change. It had to be said that the purified bottle itself was strong enough. After Yang Chen's sacrificial refining for a while, he released the thunder pomegranate more and more to release the power of lightning, but found that the purified bottle did not care about this lightning at all. After entering the sacrificial refining state, the violent power of lightning poured in, only to increase the spiritual power of the purified bottle. This also led to a result that was, the speed of the sacrificial refining was greatly accelerated. It originally took Yang Chen at least 2 months of sacrificial refining. In this case, within a short period of 20 hours, he had completed the sacrificial refining of the second layer of the heavenly spirit treasure refining secret art. The real change occurred when Yang Chen used the Earth Fiend's sacrificial array secret art to sacrificial refine the purified bottle. Like the heavenly spirit treasure refining secret art, when the sacrificial refining began, the purified bottle began to absorb the power of lightning. The power of lightning accumulated for thousands of years directly completed the purified bottle of the medicine garden. After a few hours, the first layer of the Earth Fiend's sacrificial array secret art was completed. The heavenly spirit and earthly fiend were all opened, and the interior of the purified bottle suddenly underwent some significant changes. The area of the medicine garden has expanded a lot, and the medicinal plants belonging to the first would have all skyrocketed for decades. These were not counted. What surprised Yang Chen the most was that there was something like a portal in the purified bottle. Although it couldn't be opened yet, this also meant that there was a space in the purified bottle that Yang Chen couldn't open now. As long as Yang Chen continues to sacrificial refine, he would be able to open this space one day. Chapter 448. In the past, Yang Chen always thought that in the pure bottle medicine garden, there were only these 1,000-year-old medicinal herbs. But after coming out of the valley of the howling celestial dog, Yang Chen realized that the guy who was not so good definitely needed more than 10,000 years to ascend. If that guy planted these elixirs before he ascended, they should be at least 10,000 years old by now, instead of so many 1,000-year-old elixirs. Although the 1,000-year-old elixirs were precious enough, all this was very unreasonable. The only possibility was that there was another universe in the medicine garden. What Yang Chun opened now was only a part of the medicine garden, and it was the part that grew from some seeds that fell out 1,000 years ago. The real core, Yang Chun has not yet touched it. Although it is still impossible to get in touch with the real core of the medicine garden, he has already seen the emergence of the portal. He believed that with the improvement of Yang Chen's cultivation base, this portal would eventually open, and the secrets inside would be completely open to Yang Chen. Seeing the emergence of this scene, a doubt in Yang Chen's heart was completely put down. This was reasonable. From the beginning to the end, it had been more than 2 days, but the battle was not over yet. Dozens of Yuanying stage masters, each carrying a huge formation flag, arranged a huge formation inside the villa. Unless they could defeat so many Yuanying stage masters under the cover of the formation at the same time, it was impossible for the people inside to come out silently in a short time. The 9 masters of the Deshang stage, invited by Chunyang Palace, in this formation, were fighting with the 4 most powerful masters of the 100,000 mountains. The peripheral formation was not only to prevent the enemy from escaping, but also to protect, and also to suppress the huge spiritual power fluctuations. The battle of the 13 masters of the Deshang stage was by no means what ordinary people could imagine. Everyone's every move was a powerful attack between heaven and earth. Even if there were dozens of Yuanying stage masters, they could only rely on the formation to watch. It was impossible to get close at all. Speaking of it, they were directly attacked and awakened from the state of retreat. The 3 backstage masters of the 100,000 mountains were simply shocked and angry. Just this sudden change from the retreat to the fighting state was enough to make them suffer serious injuries and almost vomit blood. Except for the guy who presided over the daily affairs, he had already been injured before the fight started. In the face of the 9 masters of the Deshang stage, the 4 guys of the 100,000 mountains also began to fight desperately. Knowing that there were so many experts attacking them without saying anything, not giving them any chance to survive, at this critical moment of life and death, they also began to erupt with power. Even though the 4 fellows were fighting with their lives on the brink of death, none of the 9 experts had the intention to perish together with them. Since they had the upper hand, they naturally had to do their best. Even if the battle dragged on for a long time, they had to exhaust them to death. They couldn't afford to suffer any heavy casualties on their side. This was also the reason why the battle had continued until now. Under the siege of 9 experts, the 4 fellows were already at the end of their rope. The one with the heaviest injuries couldn't even maintain his combat state. He hid behind a comrade, struggling at death's door. With one less enemy, everyone's spirits were greatly boosted. Under such circumstances, the 4 of them no longer had any chance of survival. They didn't even know why they suddenly encountered such a calamity. With the regret of not being able to close their eyes, the 4 masters of the Deshang stage died under the siege of 9 masters of the Deshang stage. At the moment of death, the onlookers under the formation flag also cheered. All the people in the villa have been eliminated, which also meant that the original behind-the-scenes high-level members of the 100,000 mountains were all eliminated, leaving only those small fish. The 100,000 mountains was a realistic place. Without these guys, they would change to a more powerful background, and those guys who ran the business would naturally be obedient and not dare to make trouble. The completion of this battle also meant that the 100,000 mountains were now under the control of the alliance of the 4 sections. In the future, countless precious resources would be the benefits of the 4 sections. However, the counterattack of the 4 fellows also caused 5 of the 9 masters of the Deshang stage to be injured. Fortunately, they were only minor injuries and no one lost their combat effectiveness. However, despite this, at least 2 of their cultivation base regressed. It was also a very cost-effective deal to exchange such a small price for the death of 4 masters of the Deshang stage. The old tree demon had already taken the questioning inner heart pill and integrated with the Penglai divine wood. The one who came here was a clone created by him using the clone's secret art. The one who was the most seriously injured was the old tree demon. After all, Chunyang Palace was one of the initiators, and it was also under the guise of revenge. Naturally, they had to contribute the most. The next step was to clean up the battlefield and divide the spoils. Then the next batch of personnel came and scattered around to take over the industries of the entire 100,000 mountains, quickly stabilizing the market and reassuring the people. The most difficult thing was to kill the 4 most powerful guys. This step had been completed, and the rest was not much difficult. Then the news came that the people of the 100,000 mountains had destroyed the mountain gate of Chunyang Palace. Chunyang Palace directly united with several major sects to give a merciless counterattack. Without the support of the background, everything next was natural. Especially when the 4-sect alliance announced that the rules of the 100,000 mountains would remain unchanged. The demons could still enter at will, but they could not bully the weak and rob other people's belongings at will. They even received the support of many cultivators. This move of the 4-sect alliance directly shocked the world, especially Chunyang Palace. It was rare to see such an iron-blooded performance, which made people look at them with admiration. After this incident, no one dared to act like the Xiang family and go to Chunyang Palace to act shamelessly. It must be known that the mountain gate of Chunyang Palace was still being rebuilt. Who knows if the evil fire of the destruction of the mountain gate has been vented? If they hit it, they would be looking for death. The subsequent things had little to do with Yangchen. Even the spoils of war were handed over to the old tree demon and Wang Yong to collect. He just took the bones of the 4 masters of the Deshang stage and directly rushed back to Meiqing Mountain Chunyang Palace with Shi Kuei and Xie Sha. Not counting the spoils of war, Yangchen also had a huge harvest this time. Not to mention anything else, just the thunder pomegranate tree was accelerated to more than 200 years old, and he also sacrificially refined the medicine garden and found the hidden portal, which was enough to make Yangchen happy. Not to mention the removal of Liang Xiaoming, the spy of the Taishanmen, so that his master would be safer. Was there anything more wonderful than this? The first thing Yangchen did when he returned to the sect was to visit his master. After saying hello and letting his master know that everyone was safe and sound, he went straight to the main hall of Chunyang Palace to meet the head of the palace. Is it all done? The head of the palace looked at the appearance of Yangchen and asked in surprise. It's done. Yangchen nodded and gave a positive answer to the head of the palace. Good. The head of the palace took a long breath and relaxed, and then said to Yangchen, Yangchen, the things you said last time, I have carefully considered it, and I still intend to do it according to your intentions. Oh! Yangchen was stunned, full of fog. The things he said last time? What was that? Chapter 449. In the face of Yangchen, the palace master did not hesitate too much and directly expressed his own considerations. The last time he was attacked outside, it made the palace master deeply realize that his own cultivation base was still relatively weak. Perhaps it was more than enough to manage a second-rate sect, but after the development of Chunyang Palace, it would not be able to keep up with the situation. Therefore, the rapid improvement of cultivation base had become an urgent matter for the palace master. However, the palace master was the palace master after all. Many times, Wang Yong and other elders could retreat, but the palace master could not do such a thing easily. He still needed to manage the sect. Therefore, an efficient way to improve cultivation base was urgently needed. It just so happened that Yangchen had said before that he knew a kind of metal-attributed double cultivation method, which could allow the palace master to improve his cultivation base through the method of double cultivation. This method was very suitable for the head of the palace. When cultivating, there was no need to retreat, but the effect was not worse than that of retreat. This was the reason why the palace master and Yangchen said so. Yangchen immediately understood. He did not feel that there was anything wrong with the palace master's mind. While improving his own cultivation base, he also wanted to do his best for the sect. To be honest, the palace master was indeed a good palace master. In the previous life, the palace master was deceived by Liang Xiaoming and others because of his lack of understanding of people. Now there was no such problem. Liang Xiaoming had been executed, and the sect had begun to embark on the road of vigorous development. The future of Chunyang Palace was bright, and the palace master was also full of confidence and full of vigor. In such a situation, it was not only the palace master. From the performance of Wang Yong and several other elders, they all saw the hope of the sect's revitalization. They worked hard and wanted to do a big job. This was the Chunyang Palace that Yang Chen wanted to see. I have carefully considered it these days, and I think that there are a few friends who are more suitable. The palace master said to Yang Chen, "You help me see, which one is the most suitable?" The speech was very natural, and the palace master did not feel embarrassed because he wanted Yang Chen, a younger generation disciple, to find a Tao companion for himself. Yang Chen did not feel that this should be so embarrassing. Since the cultivation method was provided by Yang Chen naturally knew better than others who were most suitable for cultivation. Looking at it one by one, it was basically some Yuanying stage masters of the Blue Cloud sect and the Green Jade Immortal Island. The Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect were sect with many female disciples, and a large number of experts were women. Now, Chunyang Palace and the two sect had a good cooperation relationship on the of 100,000 mountains. If of the palace master was willing to with one of them, of the sect Chen could have many of the sect of one of the cultivation. At the moment of seeing this list, Yang Chen suddenly had a feeling of relief. If the palace master was willing to come forward to carry out this kind of fellowship, it would be far better than Yang Chen going to become a Tao companion with Shi Shanshan or Sun Qingxue to consolidate the relationship between the two sects. But immediately Yang Chen was a little dejected. It was impossible for the palace master to have a double cultivation with two Tao companions, and it was impossible for the Blue Cloud sect and the Green Jade Immortal Island to have a Yuanying stage disciple to have a double cultivation with the palace master. No matter which one the palace master chose, it may cause the dissatisfaction of the other sect, unless someone among the elders also used this method to become a Tao companion with the disciple of another sect at the same time. Double cultivation was good for everyone, but if the pure Yang Palace had to rely on this means, it would be ridiculed by outsiders. Relying on women to connect the two major sects, it was easy to see the hope of revitalization of the sect. Maybe it would be suppressed by gossip. It was estimated that the palace master also considered this point, so he came to discuss with Yang Chen. Yang Chen glanced at it and suddenly saw a familiar name. Elder Wan Qian of the Blue Cloud sect also had a metal attribute spirit root, and her cultivation was also in the middle Yuanying stage, which was similar to the palace master, so she was a suitable candidate. Wan Qian was now in Yang Chen's medicine garden, cultivating tirelessly. If the palace master Zhang Jiao was willing, Yang Chen could release Wan Qian and the palace master Zhang Jiao for double cultivation, so that the palace master Zhang Jiao and Wan Qian's cultivation base could be improved, and because Wan Qian had disappeared, as long as it was done secretly, no one knew that it would be related to the pure Yang Palace. The problem was that Yang Chen really did not dare to suddenly tell the palace master that Elder Wan Qian had been turned into an idiot by himself. It was not that he was afraid of the palace master betraying himself, but the news was too shocking, and the palace master had to slowly accept it. Palace master, in this disciple's opinion, Elder Wan Qian of the Blue Cloud sect is a suitable candidate. Yang Chen deliberated and made a suggestion to the palace master. Elder Wan Qian? The palace master frowned. On the list, Wan Qian was relatively low, mainly because the whereabouts of Elder Wan and her disciples were unknown. Choosing Elder Wan Qian may not be realized for the time being. Elder Wan of the Blue Cloud sect has been missing for decades. The palace master was afraid that Yang Chen did not know, and explained to Yang Chen, "I am afraid that it is not so easy. The carriage will cross the mountain. The palace master does not have to worry about this. Yang Chen said with a smile, however, the palace master can be like the disciple ancestor, and first refine a life-flying sword. Wang Yong's refining of the life-flying sword was not concealed from the several elders of the same sect, and after decades of seclusion, Wang Yong's cultivation had indeed advanced by leaps and bounds. This was seen by everyone, and they were greedy in their hearts. Now that Yang Chen said so, it was also a good idea. Life-flying sword? The palace master's eyes also lit up. Half of the 100,000 mountain range was already in his hands, and in the future, the rare materials could almost be said to have everything. Refining a life-flying sword was indeed a huge temptation. In the past, it was because there were no good materials, but now he did not have to worry about this. Moreover, the refining of the life-flying sword was different from others, and it could be done without seclusion. Just like Yang Chen, the immortal beheading blade had been nourished in his sea of consciousness, but it did not prevent Yang Chen from doing other things. It was just that it would take a little longer. Speaking of it, this disciple has some suitable materials. Yang Chen smiled and took out the golden seal of the Yuanying stage master who was killed last time and sent it to the palace master. Although the golden seal had been damaged by the sword formation of the dome hall, and a magic treasure had been destroyed, the material was still there. It was still a top-grade metal element material, and it was suitable to be used to refine a metal element flying sword. Chapter 450. This golden seal, don't you keep it for yourself? The master of the palace certainly knew that this golden seal was a good material, and it was also excellent for refining a flying sword. However, as the master of the palace, he had not taken the materials of his disciples to refine a flying sword for himself. This disciple will not refine a metal attribute flying sword for the time being. This is the disciple's filial piety. The palace master can accept it. Yang Chen smiled and pushed the golden seal to the side of the palace master, the dual cultivation companion of the palace master. This disciple will think of a way. First, he put the words here, so that the master of the palace could be mentally prepared. After Yang Chen got Wan Qian out, he could accept it, and would not be frightened all of a sudden. Moreover, during this time, Yang Chen must refine Wan Qian, the living puppet, again, so that she would not have any changes because of the improvement of her cultivation base. Although this possibility was not great, it was better to be careful than to sail a ship for 10,000 years. The master of the palace was not surprised that Yang Chen gave him the golden seal. Yang Chen could even give the questioning inner heart pill without hesitation, let alone a small material. In contrast, the master of the palace cared more about Yang Chen's intention, which was 100 times more intimate than Liang Xiaoming's. This golden seal was enough for the master of the palace to have something to do for a long time. After learning about what happened in the 100,000 mountains from Yang Chen in detail, the master of the palace could not help but be surprised again. "You planted the thunder pomegranate?" The master of the palace couldn't believe what he heard. His eyes were wide open, and he was stunned. In the past few years, some people also wanted to blame Yang Chen for this. Who would have thought that Yang Chen had already planted the thunder pomegranate? Yang Chen did not answer. He just smiled and took out 10 thunder pomegranates from the Qiankuan bag and placed them in front of the master of the palace. These thunder pomegranates were fully mature, and the power of thunder and lightning had been released. They could be used to absorb the thunder tribulation. The master of the palace reached out and picked up the thunder pomegranate and looked at it one by one. Looking at these thunder pomegranates of the same size and the same year, apart from being pleasantly surprised, what else could the palace master say? In this way, those Jidon stage disciples in my sect who are not confident will have the hope to step into the Yuanying stage. The master of the palace did not know how to describe his current mood. The Shirwan Mountains made Chunyang Palace rich, and the thunder pomegranate could give many Jindan masters who had no hope of entering the Yuanying realm in their lives more hope. Although relying on external forces to improve was not a pure way, for those disciples with not outstanding qualifications, being able to reach the Jedon stage was already the limit. But now with the Thunder Pomegranate, it was possible to enter the nascent soul stage. While his lifespan was greatly increased, his cultivation base was also greatly increased. Regardless of whether it was for the disciples or for the sect, it was a great thing. The increase in the number of nascent soul realm disciples also meant that the sect's strength had increased greatly. If their cultivations had increased to the nascent soul realm, they might be able to break through to a higher realm. The higher the realm, the greater the chances. It was a win-win situation. This Thunder Pomegranate, how many do you have? The sect will take them all. Of course, the master of the palace knew which things were important and which things were not important. He directly said to Yang Chen, sect contribution, spirit stones, magic weapons, cultivation methods, other materials, whatever you want, I will give you. The improvement of the strength of the sect, in addition to the abundance of resources and the number of masters, there was also an important point, that was, the cultivation of low-level disciples. Now that the Chunyang Palace's outer sect disciples had the Qi-seeking pill, the number of outer sect disciples had greatly increased. The Jedon stage disciples had the Thunder Pomegranate, and their hopes had greatly increased. The senior elders had the questioning inner heart pill, which was simply an overall improvement from top to bottom. As the master of the palace, what other extravagant hopes could he have? Speaking of which, all of these were almost all because of Yang Chen. Or it could be said that it was simply because of Yang Chen. From the Qi-seeking pill to the Thunder Pomegranate to the questioning inner heart pill, from the 100,000 mountains to finding traitors like Liang Xiaoming, none of them had nothing to do with Yang Chen. At this moment, the master of the palace even had a strong desire. He wanted to train Yang Chen to be the next master of the Chunyang Palace. When this idea came out, it could no longer be suppressed. Although this kind of thing had to be discussed with the other elders, he believed that the other elders would never have an objection. A disciple with great luck and talent in alchemy, who would not be willing? Just looking at what Yang Chen had done over the years, it was enough to make the master of the palace feel inferior, not to mention the other elders. Palace Master, this Thunder Pomegranate has already shone in the eyes of the masters of other sects. It is estimated that it is impossible for the sect to monopolize it. Yang Chen looked at the master of the palace who had fallen into the wonderful feeling of longing. It was a little funny, but he had to interrupt the wish of the master of the palace. Even if it is given to the sect, they will ask for it from the sect through various channels. Well, what you said makes sense. The master of the palace was worthy of being the master of the palace. After immediately realizing the reality, he came up with a way to deal with it. However, since you found the planting method, if they want it, they have to accept the favor of my sect, or exchange it with something far more valuable than the value of the Thunder Pomegranate itself. In the end, the biggest benefit is still ours. You don't have to worry about this, the sect will coordinate it. Yes, Palace Master. Yang Chen knew that the master of the palace had a countermeasure, and no longer said anything. Yang Chen, you have been in the limelight recently. This is a good thing, but it is also a bad thing. The master of the palace was happy and began to worry about Yang Chen. Since it was planned to cultivate Yang Chen as the next master, it was necessary to consider more comprehensively. The first was the issue of safety. When you go out in the future, no matter when, you must take Shi Kuei and Xiesha with you. They like to be with you, you are safe and have someone to take care of you. Yes, Palace Master. Yang Chen promised. This was the concern of the master of the palace. Of course, he knew what was good and bad. Your cultivation base, after less than 40 years after the foundation stage, you reach the late stage of the foundation stage. The master of the palace continued, the speed of improvement is unprecedented. Although it is related to the absorption of the fire seed, you still insist on the sentence, haste makes waste. Even if there are more elixirs, you can't abuse it. At the appropriate time, carefully consolidate it, don't make mistakes. This was a real concern. In all fairness, Yang Chen's cultivation speed was indeed a bit fast. It was unbelievable. Even Shi Shanshan of the Green Jade Immortal Island, from the foundation stage to the Jedon stage, it took a full 80 years. People with full spiritual roots were like this, not to mention Yang Chen. The worry of the master of the palace was not unreasonable. This disciple knows. Yang Chen bowed and thanked him. The matter of the 100,000 mountains has been resolved. This disciple is planning to calm down and consolidate his cultivation base. Chapter 451. From Yang Chen's point of view, he also felt that his cultivation was somewhat unbalanced. If it weren't for him being busy solving the affairs of the 100,000 mountains these days and completely wiping out the future troubles for Gao Yu, Yang Chen would not be like this. On the surface, Yang Chen's current fire attribute cultivation base was outstanding, and people could see that he was a fire cultivator at a glance. However, for the Yin-Yang 5 Elements secret art that Yang Chen wanted to cultivate and even the great Yin-Yang 5 Elements secret art, this was not a good phenomenon. The Yin-Yang 5 Elements secret art was primarily about balance. Although Yang Chen could tolerate the dominance of the fire attribute spiritual power in the short term, a balance must be achieved in the end. During this time, Yang Chen could just improve the spiritual power of other attribute. Anyway, the most ruthless ones in the 100,000 mountains had been killed, and the rest of the people could never think of revenge for the young master or the old master. Even if they wanted to take revenge, they would face Chunyang Palace, not Yang Chen and Gao Yu. Just when Yang Chen was about to retire, the head of the palace suddenly stopped Yang Chen and once again informed Yang Chen of a piece of news that gave him a headache. Blue Cloud Sect. You should also go to the Blue Cloud Sect. They asked for the same treatment for Sun Qingxue and Shi Shanshan. You can't favor one and discriminate against the other. Since you have already gone with Shi Shanshan, you might as well go out with Sun Qingxue to gain experience. In his previous life, Yang Chen had never experienced this kind of battle. He had no experience at all. He did not know that his procrastination and indecisiveness were taboo. In fact, few people in the cultivation world would have such troubles, and those like Yang Chen were unique. Yes, Palace Master. Since the head of the palace had ordered so, Yang Chen could only helplessly agree. He didn't hate Sun Qingxue. Since even Shi Shanshan could train with him, it wouldn't be a problem to drag Sun Qingxue along. The matter of the 100,000 great mountains had been carefully arranged at the beginning. However, when it was time to take action, it was as swift as lightning, uprooting everything. The actions of Chunyang Palace and the other three sects directly caused an uproar in Taoism. But now that things had come to this point, no one could interfere, no matter what pretense they used. It was not to help, but to seize the industry of the four sections. This kind of hatred of cutting off people's wealth, no one would be stupid enough to anger the Blue Cloud Sect and the Green Jade Immortal Island at the same time, plus two masters of the Deshang stage, Chunyang Palace and the Beast Taming Sect. The follow-up personnel also began to be dispatched, and everything was in an orderly manner. The 9 Deshang stage masters and dozens of Yuanying stage masters were divided into 9 teams and began to take over the industries of the 100,000 mountains. A brand new villa has been built in another place. Yang Chen has absorbed all the power of the 7-star Heavenly Thunder formation. The original place has been shaken into powder by the aftermath of the battle of the 13 masters of the Deshang stage, and there was no possibility of using it. There would be 3 masters of the Deshang stage here all the year round. 2 of them were from the Green Jade, Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud Sect. They had many masters and could take turns. The remaining one was from the Chunyang Palace and the Beast Taming Sect. The masters of each sect were responsible for 10 years. Of course, the masters in charge did not manage any specific things. The management affairs were still carried out by the management personnel jointly sent by the 4 sections. They believed that the order of the 100,000 mountains would only be better than before, and the income would be higher. For the worries of the demons, the four sects also expressed full sincerity. This time, it was entirely because the 100,000 mountains destroyed the Chunyang Palace gate first, so there was such a retaliatory act. As for the future business was business, and it had nothing to do with the position of the demons. This statement has been more or less recognized by everyone. Taishaman was the only sect besides the Chunyang Palace who knew the truth, but they did not dare to say it. It was impossible for Taishaman to publicize that the Chunyang Palace gate was not destroyed by the 100,000 mountains, but by the undercover arranged by Taishaman in Chunyang Palace. Everything was carried out in an orderly manner, and the contact between the four sects was also unusually frequent. Just the spoils of war in the villa alone were enough to make everyone smile. This was not counting the questioning inner heart pills that Chunyang Palace promised. This kind of good thing, the more the better. Gui Shanyu, the hall master of the Chunyang Palace Hall of Eccentrics, was on the list of the first round. The 100,000 mountain range was the old tree demon's hometown. After pacifying those disobedient guys, the old tree demon directly threw a large pile of at least tens of thousands of osmanthus saplings everywhere in the 100,000 mountain range, just like in Meiqing Mountain. When all the roots were connected, Gui Shanyu would be able to know the movements everywhere in the 100,000 mountains at any time. It was really appropriate to use him to sit at the beginning. Naturally, it was also the clone of Gui Shanyu who was in charge. The main body was still in the courtyard of Yangchen in the Chunyang Palace, absorbing the Penglai divine wood. These business affairs had nothing to do with Yangchen for the time being, and naturally, there were professionals in the four sects to deal with them. Yangchen hurriedly returned to Gao Yu's side again. His master's water attribute cultivation method had also reached the middle stage of the foundation stage. Yangchen could even discuss cultivation with his master. This time, Yangchen also exposed a lot of things. Questioning inner heart pills, thunder pomegranate, and a magic weapon that could kill a master of the Yuanying stage. If someone wanted to deal with Yangchen in the future, they would definitely consider these factors. Yangchen could only find some other cards that others could not know. The master ancestor already had the flying sword refined by the horn of the fire Qilin, but his master's flying sword had not yet been found. At the same time, he promised Gong Suanling's life source magic weapon. Yangchen also had to consider it. Thinking of the remaining things in the treasure house of the Dragon Palace, Yangchen couldn't help but be moved. Xiao Tian has swallowed half of the blood essence of the celestial dog, and the blood of the Yazi in his body was being fully stimulated. The current Xiao Tian could no longer see the appearance of the puppy before. The head was still the original head, but the body had been pulled very long, slowly becoming like a dragon's body. The slender body was wrapped on the blade of the bright ray sword all day long, and it was not afraid of the sharpness of the blade. In his mouth, he held the second wood flying sword and did not let go, for fear that someone would snatch it. Only Yangchen could take this flying sword from its mouth. Yazi, the second son of the dragon body and the head of a jackal, has a strong character, is brave and good at fighting, bloodthirsty and aggressive, always holding the sword in his mouth, glaring, engraved on the blade ring, the sword hilt swallowing, to increase his own powerful power. Xiao Tian has become more and more like the legendary Yazi. Maybe now the blood is being stimulated crazily. When Xiao Tian completely becomes Yazi, maybe he can completely open the treasure of the Dragon Palace and get all the things. Thinking of this, Yangchen looked at the situation of Xiao Tian again, and then did not hesitate to feed the remaining half of the blood essence of the celestial dog to Xiao Tian. Chapter 452. Yangchen, you say, the sect suddenly took over the 100,000 mountains. Will it attract other sects to covet it? Gao Yu just learned about the big move of the sect, and she couldn't help but be shocked by the big move of the sect's top management. When Yang Chen rushed to her side, she was discussing this matter with Gong Sunling. When she saw Yang Chen, she naturally asked, "How come?" Yang Chen smiled and explained, "The destruction of the sect is just an excuse. The real contribution is the Green Jade, Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect. My sect and the Beast Taming sect are just helpers. If other sects want to have an idea, they have to consider the ideas of the Green Jade, Immortal Island, and the Blue Cloud sect." The two women just said so, and they did not immediately worry about it. But Gao Yu still looked at Yang Chen and didn't make a sound for a long time. In the end, she asked with a straight face, "Did you do this?" The 100,000 mountains are not giving up, they still want to settle the old accounts of the past. Yang Chen nodded. At this time, he was not afraid to tell Gao Yu the truth. They have attacked this disciple twice. This disciple is afraid that they will find the master's head, so I made the first move. Gao Yu guessed this was the reason. Yang Chen almost lifted the entire 100,000 mountains last time. If he was not worried about Gao Yu's injury, he would not easily kill the manager of the auction house and the young master. If the 4 Deshang stage masters of the 100,000 mountains were there at that time, Yang Chen would definitely not hesitate to use the Bloody River. Even if he sacrificially refined the immortal beheading blade, he would turn the 100,000 mountains into a bloody slaughterhouse. For her disciple's mind, Gao Yu simply didn't know what to say. She only felt that the most touching heartstring in her heart was once again plucked, her nose was sour, and her tears were a little uncontrollable. But in the end, in front of Yang Chen and Gong Sunling, he forced himself to hold back. For himself, Yang Chen even uprooted the 100,000 mountains directly, including 4 masters of the Deshang stage, and Yang Chen was just a junior in the foundation stage at the moment. This made Gao Yu feel touched, surprised, and worried. Just for such a simple reason, Yang Chen took out the questioning inner heart pill and thunderbolt pomegranate. These things could set off a great uproar in the entire cultivation world, just to give himself a safety and no future troubles. Gao Yu didn't even know how to return such affection. Gong Sunling's eyes were full of envy, looking at Yang Chen, it was also a burst of tenderness. Even for cultivators, they could not completely cut off their emotions. After all, there were still some people who had feelings for others. "Don't worry, it's already over." Yang Chen comforted his master. Seeing the happy expression of his master who was about to cry, Yang Chen's heart was also filled with a kind of sweetness. For his master, even if he paid more, so what? You will stay in the sect for the next few years, you are not allowed to run around. Gao Yu took out the majesty of a master and gave Yang Chen a tough order. There must be a lot of people outside who are thinking about you now, you can't go out at will. Yes, master. Yang Chen did not refute and directly agreed. Anyway, it would take some time for Xiao Tian to absorb the blood essence of the howling celestial dog. During this time, he would stay in the sect and accompany his master. However, Gao Yu's worries also reminded Yang Chen. Chunyang Palace united with the Blue Cloud sect, the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Beast Taming sect and swallowed the 100,000 mountains. Although others did not dare to do anything to Chunyang Palace for the time being, such a large amount of income would definitely make some people jealous. They couldn't deal with the entire Chunyang Palace, but it was not impossible to deal with some disciples of Chunyang Palace. The cultivation world was also full of such things, so he had to make plans in advance. Of course, the best way was to greatly improve the combat effectiveness of all the disciples of Chunyang Palace. The overall strength of Chunyang Palace was up, just like those first-class sects, and others naturally did not dare to have crooked ideas. For the time being, Yang Chen could not take care of all the disciples of Chunyang Palace. However, these people around him, whether it was his master, Gong Sunling, Du Qian, Shanghai Feng, Wang Yuan, and others, the strength of these people must be improved as soon as possible. Soon, Yang Chen thought of a place that was absolutely suitable for a group of people in the foundation stage to hone their fighting skills, and it could also have enough benefit. That place didn't have much meaning for Yang Chen, but after complete control, it was an excellent place for the sect to gain experience, and it was also a retreat in times of crisis. A cunning rabbit has 3 burrows. Chunyang Palace now had Meiqing Mountain and 100,000 mountains, but it was still missing one. It just so happened that Yang Chen thought of this place, which could be used as a place for a long time to gain experience. If it could be collected in the end, it would also be a wonderful Immortal's Cave in Chunyang Palace. There were many levels of Immortal's Cave. The one that Yang Chen thought of was the Immortal's Cave left by a certain person before he died. In Blue Vault Mountain, it was temporarily closed and needed a special method to open it. As for collecting it, it required a more troublesome process. Blue Vault Mountain Immortal's Cave was more spiritual than the current Meiqing Mountain. It was a good Immortal's Cave at the level of Blessed Land, which was far from being comparable to the current location of the sect in Chunyang Palace. There were many such Immortal's Caves in Yang Chen's memory. Yang Chen couldn't occupy them all by himself. What's more, the Immortal's Cave was not as good as the East Sea Dragon King's Dragon Palace treasure house. For these extra ones, Yang Chen certainly gave priority to the people around him to get benefit. Blue Vault Mountain Immortal's Cave had been closed for too long. It was said that there were many demon beasts and puppets in it. It was not known what they had grown up to now, but the Immortal's Cave was naturally divided into palaces and places of different levels. Different levels of places had different levels of demon beasts and puppets. It was an excellent place for experience. The Immortal's Cave was big enough. Even if the tens of thousands of people in Chunyang Palace were put in, it was more than enough. Even if the Chunyang Palace was several times larger, it could completely accommodate it. It was originally the hiding place of a big sect. No one knew who destroyed it. Later, it became the private Immortal's Cave of someone in the heavenly court, and finally, it became Yang Chen's wish. Since he had nothing to do, he just took these acquaintances around him and walked around. It must be known that in addition to the demon beasts and puppets, there were a large number of medicine fields that had been closed for more than 10,000 years in the Immortal's Cave. If they were not ruined by the demon beasts, they could still get a lot of benefit. What's more, the treasures of the big sect were not known if they had all been searched. Even if there were none of these, just those demon beasts that had lived in places with excellent spiritual power for tens of thousands of years were already coveted treasures. Casually plucking a strand of hair from one of them could probably be sold as something like 1,000-year-old Xian silk. Such a good place, it was just right to take his master, Gong Sunling, and have a good adventure. Chapter 453. Coincidentally, the few people Yang Chen was looking for were not there. Du Qian, Sheng Guanfeng, Wang Yuan, and Yang Chen's 4 former slaves were all sent out by their respective masters at this time. Only Yang Chen, Master Gao Yu, and senior sister Gong Sunling were left here. They are unlucky. Yang Chen could only give up the plan of waiting for them with some regret. He simply went in with his master and senior sister to inquire about it. This time, Yang Chen was planning to let his master and senior sister have a careful experience and get some benefit. For the time being, he would first tell the other people in the sect, and then talk about it next time. Moreover, if he reported it to the sect, he also needed evidence, and he couldn't just say it. It just so happened that they went to inquire about it first, and when they came back, they would say that they met it by chance. Where are you taking us? Gao Yu knew that Yang Chen often had some surprising actions, so she was not surprised, and did not refuse, but asked first. There is a good thing, don't worry about where to go, anyway, the disciple will not harm the master. Yang Chen sold a secret, and did not say it directly, but wanted to give them a surprise. Gao Yu promised, Gong Sunling also nodded, and Yang Chen immediately went to report to the head of the palace. No way, he was now a popular person in the sect, and it was not allowed to go out at will. The head of the palace must know where he was. The disciple and master and senior sister went out to gain experience. Yang Chen made a little lie, it was not a big thing, and he would hide it for the time being. Well, take Shi Kuei and Xiesha, and be careful. The head of the palace certainly would not limit the freedom of Yang Chen, but told him to bring 2 masters to protect him. At this time, the head of the palace was busy with the reception and management of the 100,000 mountains, and had no time to focus on Yang Chen. Anyway, as long as Yang Chen was safe and sound, he could go anywhere at will. Every time Shi Kuei and Xiesha followed Yang Chen, it was to kill and get rich, which suited their appetite. In particular, this kind of blatant killing and looting was actually praised by people. This was much more glorious than when they were in the desolate sand valley. As soon as Yang Chen called out, the 2 happily followed Yang Chen and left. It took some time to fly to Blue Vault Mountain. In the shuttle, Yang Chen learned the enjoyment of Shanshan last time. He also carefully made some tea leaves on the spot for his master and senior sister. After brewing, he sent them to his master and senior sister and the 2 seniors, waiting for them to taste. Gao Yu enjoyed the filial piety of her apprentice, and she was at ease. Gong Sunling, as a senior sister, also sat and enjoyed it justifiably. Even if Shi Kuei and Xiesha were older than Yang Chen was the only one who did it. After calmly tasting the delicious tea, Gao Yu nodded slightly to express appreciation. Gong Sunling was very dignified and sipped a little bit. She did not speak for a long time, but the intoxication in her eyes had already betrayed her feelings. As for Shi Kuei and Xiesha, it was completely like a cow chewing peony, spoiling the scenery. 1 sip was not enough, and Yang Chen almost wanted to give each of them a kick. I heard that the Green Jade Immortal Island's Fairy Sure is a good tea. Yang Chen, did you learn this technique from Fairy Sure? Everyone tasted for a while, and Gao Yu said this with a smile. In one sentence, Yang Chen didn't know how to make an excuse. According to his previous habits, he really wouldn't make tea for his master and senior sister. It was only when the flying shuttle was serving that he remembered that he had such an enjoyment when he was with Shanshan, so he copied it. He didn't expect to be ridiculed by his master. Gong Sunling also stopped the taste of the small mouthful. Her face looked thoughtfully at Yang Chen, seemingly waiting for his answer. I don't want to hide it from master, she really reminded me. Yang Chen did not deny it, but he did not fully admit it however. This technique is something that this disciple has known for a long time, it is not her credit. After that, Yang Chen seemed to be wondering how he would so naturally bring out the habit of being with Shanshan. Although there was nothing strange about serving tea to the elders, Yang Chen obviously did not do this before. Strange is strange, but it does not prevent everyone from having fun on the road. Yang Chen's technique was excellent, but the water this time was also good water collected, and the tea leaves were refined in the medicine garden for 200 years. It was more fragrant than when he was with Shanshan. Although Gao Yu and Gong Sunling didn't have the habit of drinking tea before, they still drank it with relish. Shi Kuei and Xiesha were completely followers. Even if they had the highest cultivation base, they generally didn't care about anything. They just followed Yang Chen to kill and set fire. Along the way, it was still his master and senior sister who communicated with Yang Chen. Where are you going to take us? Seeing Yang Chen driving the shuttle for 2 months, he actually went out of the sea. The shuttle turned into a huge sailboat and began to drift forward on the sea. Gao Yu couldn't help but ask. You will know when you get there. Yang Chen didn't say it. He didn't want to let the surprise be in advance. This Blue Vault Mountain had to cross the sea and enjoy the wonderful scenery along the way with his master. What a pleasant thing! Yang Chen couldn't wait to slow down on the road. Did you know it from a miscellaneous book? Gao Yu guessed again. Yes. Yang Chen nodded hurriedly. Now he understood how correct it was to create an image of himself as a scholar who had read all the miscellaneous books in the world. Everything could be pushed to this. Anyway, others couldn't verify it, and Yang Chen wouldn't tell them which miscellaneous book it was. It was really tight, and it was too late to make up a book. Gao Yu no longer asked about the origin, but the topic suddenly led to another direction. Yang Chen, very sure of the Green Jade, Immortal Island, and Sun Qingxue of the Blue Cloud sect, how are you going to deal with them? This disciple doesn't know. When he heard this question, Yang Chen's whole face was bitter and he sighed. He really didn't know what to do. The head of the palace said that I can't favor one and discriminate against the other. Let this disciple go out with Sun Qingxue first. This disciple is worried. What is there to worry about? Gao Yu looked at Yang Chen's frowning face. She was a little depressed when she talked about this topic. She didn't know why she suddenly became cheerful, and said with a joking tone, anyway, whether it is Fairy Shi or Sun Qingxue, they are all talented disciples. Such a fairy-like person, to be your Tao companion, isn't it good? Looking at the inexplicable smile on his master's face, Yang Chen really didn't want to argue about this topic anymore. He could only raise his hand lazily, which was a response to his master's joke. Actually, you might as well think about it. Gao Yu didn't say anything, but when she said it, it was the words that made Yang Chen horrified. Anyway, it is normal for a man to have 3 wives and 4 concubines. In the sect, there is also your senior sister Gongsun, who is not worse than the 2 of them. Just accept them all. Anyway, you have more than one kind of spiritual power, right? Chapter 454. After these words, not only Yang Chen was shocked and stunned in place, but even Gong Sunling next to him was shocked by Gao Yu's words. Suddenly her face turned red, and she was at a loss. Even her delicate hands were a little confused. After Gao Yu said these words, her heart suddenly relaxed. Yang Chen was his own apprentice. Between the 2 of them, it seemed that it should be impossible. But since Yang Chen was her own disciple, Gao Yu considered from the master's point of view. Of course, the more wives Yang Chen had, the better, and she would be happy to see it. As soon as this thought came out, although it was inexplicably a little sad, there was another kind of happiness. Her own disciple, of course, she had to think for him wholeheartedly and make arrangements for him. Yang Chen didn't know what to do, and it seemed that he should let his master decide. This. Yang Chen really didn't know how to respond to Gao Yu. He just said 2 words in a daze. Then he looked at Gao Yu, and then looked at Gong Sunling, who was ashamed and resentful, but he couldn't say a word. What? Do you dislike your senior sister? Gao Yu simply picked up the topic and directly pulled up Gong Sunling next to her. How is your senior sister worse than them? Look. In terms of appearance, Ling is also one of the best. In terms of aptitude, Ling has the full value of Earth's spiritual root. In terms of cultivation, Ling is similar to you. It's just a match made in heaven. As soon as Gong Sunling mentioned Yang Chen's dual cultivation companion, she would have some unnatural reactions. This point Gao Yu had long discovered, but she had never pointed it out. Gao Yu was conflicted in her heart. How could she not see Gong Sunling's thoughts? Gong Sunling was hindered by the identity of her senior sister, and it was not good to take the initiative to speak, so Gao Yu spoke for her. In any case, he was going to find wives for his disciple. Of course, the more the merrier. The more suitable, the better. Moreover, Gong Sunling was an acquaintance. When the time came, she could take good care of Yang Chen. Listening to Gao Yu's clear words, Gong Sunling was too shy to lift her head, but there was no reason for her heart to loosen. The words hidden in her heart were spoken by Gao Yu. Although it was not her own mouth, it also said what was on her mind. Now Gong Sunling was a little nervous out of thin air. She didn't know what Yang Chen would think. Would he feel that if she didn't open her mouth, it would be a shameless idea, but she didn't know how to open her mouth. Her delicate body had begun to tremble slightly. Yang Chen had never expected that his master would use this angle to help him. This was completely different from what he had imagined. In his mind, the person he loved the most was his master. He had missed his master for thousands of years in his previous life. It was not easy for him to see his master again. He was once again a disciple of his master. He had once again relived those warm scenes. Why did his master suddenly want to find someone else for him? No. It's not that I dislike senior sister. Yang Chen's heart was in a mess, but he also knew that he couldn't make Gong Sunling sad at this time. If he said that he disliked Gong Sunling, it would definitely hurt his senior sister seriously. However, this was completely different from Yang Chen's thoughts. How should he continue? Hearing Yang Chen's words, Gong Sunling's trembling delicate body suddenly calmed down. Suddenly, there was a warm current flowing into her heart, making Gong Sunling's whole body warm up. It was just that in the few breaths of time that Yang Chen reacted, Gong Sunling felt like she had fought with someone with all her strength. She only felt that her whole body was weak, as if all the strength in her body had been sucked away. As soon as Yang Chen's words came out, Gong Sunling almost couldn't hold on and collapsed. Fortunately, she had been sitting and didn't lose her composure. After correcting her master's mentality, Gao Yu suddenly found that she could easily see through the thoughts of Yang Chen and Gong Sunling. Gong Sunling obviously had a good impression of Yang Chen because of the previous contact, but she didn't dare to say it. As for Gao Yu herself, she asked herself and was reluctant to push Yang Chen to others. However, she was Yang Chen's master. What could she do? Did she really not care about the relationship between master and disciple? Gao Yu herself hadn't seen it to this point. In that case, then I will make the decision for you. What are you worried about? Gao Yu put on the posture of a master, stared at Yang Chen and asked. Sudden, it was definitely sudden. Yang Chen has been scared by Gao Yu's words and became a silly guy. From the perspective of the master and apprentice, Yang Chen should listen to Gao Yu's instructions, which was a performance of respecting his master. But from an emotional point of view, Yang Chen couldn't accept his master's arrangement in any case. He was able to be reborn 10,000 years ago and re-enter his master's sect, not to let his master arrange a double cultivation companion for him. Master! Yang Chen suddenly smiled. Do you think that the Blue Cloud sect and the Green Jade Immortal Island will tolerate their genius disciple to become a disciple's Tao companion? Since he didn't want to accept his master's arrangement, Yang Chen must also think of a reasonable reason to refuse. And obviously this reason was strong enough. The Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect, which were the leading sect, allowed the genius disciple of their own sect to double cultivate with Yang Chen, which was already the limit. At the same time, with the disciples of the two sects, it was not to make friends with the two sects, but to provoke. Yang Chen thought of this reason, Gao Yu also thought of it, and he couldn't help but feel discouraged. However, Gao Yu looked at Gong Sunling, who was a little dispirited, and suddenly gritted her teeth. Since it can't be at the same time, I say, it's better to double cultivate with your senior sister than to argue with them. These words made Gong Sunling even more ashamed and indignant. She lowered her head and held the small teacup in her hands, as if she was going to wring water out of the teacup. She didn't dare to say anything and just sat there and waited. That also requires the head of the palace to nod his head. Yang Chen smiled bitterly. Gao Yu's sudden change in attitude made him unable to accept it at once. That's right. Gao Yu thought about it and could only helplessly give up this topic. Then you tell me, what will we encounter when we go to the place to practice this time? Speaking of this, although Yang Chen has been confidential, he doesn't mind revealing a little bit here. There is nothing too special. If we are lucky, we can find a pile of thousands of years-old elixirs, the magic weapons of the predecessors, or the lost cultivation methods, abundant spiritual veins, and so on. If we are lucky? Gong Sunling next to this topic was no longer so embarrassed. She heard some clues from Yang Chen's mouth, and then asked, what if the luck is bad? If the luck is bad. Yang Chen looked up at Shi Kuei and Xie Sha, who had already raised their spirits, and suddenly replied with a smile, then there may only be fierce monsters and powerful puppets. Chapter 455. Blue Vault Mountain is on a huge island. There are not many green mountains and rivers here, and there are not even a few trees. It's hard to believe that there is a grotto heaven-level Immortal's cave here. Yang Chen put away the shuttle, and everyone stood on the island and looked at each other. Although looking at the magnificent sea on the sailboat every day is very broad-minded, but every day for a month, it is still more exciting to set foot on land. However, this excitement was quickly replaced by confusion. Here? Is there a monster? Shi Kuei didn't believe it, and even flew around the island quickly. After returning, he asked Yang Chen with a surprised face. It is true that there are a few high peaks on the island, but there are only a few coconut trees around the island, and there is no water source on the island. It was dusty, and there were rocks everywhere. Not to mention the monster, it is difficult to see even a few living things, if the coconut trees near the sea are counted as living things. It is better to have no books than to believe in books. Gao Yu was able to see Yang Chen being defeated once, and she was very happy to put on a look of inculcation and teach Yang Chen. However, her face is so beautiful, even if it is stiff, it also gives people a feeling of coldness. Yang Chen looked at Gao Yu, suddenly immersed in her style, and didn't want to say a word. Junior brother. Gong Sunling next to him is very helpless and pushed Yang Chen, pushing him out of that state of obsession, and her voice can't help but have some bitterness. Almost everyone can see that Yang Chen's heart is on his master, but everyone has a tacit understanding that no one said it. And Gao Yu seems to have made up her mind to be the master of Yang Chen, and she always stands in the position of the master to consider Yang Chen. Is it possible that the monster is in the sea? Xie Sha is on the beach, frowning and staring at the sea. There are countless monsters in the sea, and everyone has an idea. But he and Shi Kuei are both monsters of the earth attribute. Although the 5 elements restrain the earth and water, it is not so convenient to go to the sea. If everyone knew that there was something good here, wouldn't it have been known long ago? Yang Chen couldn't say much to his master, but he could say to Shi Kuei and Xie Sha, "Do you want to bet? What are we betting on?" Shi Kuei and Xie Sha were really not afraid to bet with Yang Chen. To be honest, they really didn't care about winning or losing. Cultivators and demonic beasts sometimes had very different ideas. "We'll bet on your earnings after you enter," Yang Chen said with a smile, but then he felt that it was a little inappropriate, so he added, "half of the earnings." "Alright." Shi Kuei and Xie Sha didn't care at all. Anyway, they got good things. It was Yang Chen who gave them the opportunity. It was not a pity to give half to Yang Chen. Gao Yu and Gong Sunling looked at Yang Chen and the 2 Yuanying stage seniors, but they did not stop them. They also knew that Shi Kuei and Xie Sha didn't care about these things. "Come with me." Yang Chen took the lead and took off with his sword, flying toward the highest of the mountain peaks. Everyone was also unwilling to lag behind and kept up. All the mountain peaks on this island were gathered together to form the Blue Vault Mountain. The original sect of the Blue Vault Mountain has been destroyed for at least tens of thousands of years, and it was normal for no one to know about it. After flying around the mountain, Yang Chen determined the position, then drove the flying sword and slowly flew to the edge of a cliff halfway up the mountain, hovering in the air. Everyone looked at Yang Chen's movements in confusion, but no one spoke and waited quietly. A series of secret techniques were made, and everyone could even see a shining symbol coming out of Yang Chen's hands and submerged into the almost vertical cliff, flashing away. Different symbols with different spiritual power and secret techniques flashed almost thousands of times. When Yang Chen's hand stopped, everyone looked at the opposite cliff like a dream. In the place where it was suspended in the air, there was a transparent and almost invisible portal. Only a few cultivators like them could barely see it at such a close distance. "You go in first. As soon as I go in, the portal will disappear. If you want to come out, you can only open it from the inside," Yang Chen said. "After going in, be careful, don't walk around for the time being." Everyone gathered together. The sudden appearance of the portal made everyone cautious. Yang Chen reminded them so solemnly that everyone knew what was good and bad. At the moment, several people directly sacrificed their protective magic weapons, and the flying sword was also ready. Then they nodded to Yang Chen. Shi Kuei and Xiesha went in first. They were masters of the Yuanying stage, and they could resist one or two troubles. Gao Yu followed. This time she had let go of the fire attribute spiritual power and restored to the master of the Jedon stage. Finally, it was Gong Sunling, then Yang Chen. The portal seemed to be a 9-zigzag array. After entering, it was a long dark corridor with twists and turns. Everyone went in and followed what Yang Chen said. No one moved, but carefully looked around. When it came to spiritual awareness, Yang Chen was the most powerful among everyone. Moreover, after the spiritual awareness of the three purities' secret art was released, the scope of exploration was larger than that of Shi Kuei and Xiesha in the Yuanying stage. After a careful investigation, Yang Chen was relieved. A small flame was ignited. This was a very small fire attribute array, only emitting a flame the size of a torch, and a small piece of low-grade spirit stone could support it for a long time. This was refined by Gong Sunling herself, which was used in the Immortal Falling Abyss, and now it just came in handy. The fire was ignited, so that everyone was more accustomed to it. Yang Chen indicated that everyone was okay, but everyone still carefully moved forward along the tunnel. Especially Shi Kuei and Xiesha, each holding a snake-tooth dagger and a scorpion-tail stinger in their hands, as if they were facing an enemy. The tunnel was very clean, and there was no dust because there had been no people for many years. It seemed that there was a dust removal array. It was normal to think about it. Even the special entrance array had lasted for so many years, and the small array inside was really not worth mentioning. This was a place full of spiritual power, so it was normal. However, speaking of the abundance of spiritual power, Yang Chen was a bit strange. It was very ordinary in this tunnel, and he did not notice any rich spiritual power, which was very puzzling. The ancient tunnel was all brick and stone structures, and there were some runes that no one could recognize. The tunnel could even isolate the exploration of spiritual awareness. After all, it was an ancient immortal's cave that had been sealed for thousands of years. Even if it was Yang Chen, he couldn't help but be careful. Other people walked a little bit along the tunnel, but they didn't have so many thoughts as Yang Chen. Everyone was on guard against possible dangers at any time. Yang Chen said that if they were unlucky, this would be the world of monsters and puppets, and they couldn't help but have 120% of their spirit. There was a sudden light in front, and Yang Chen motioned to Gong Sunling to extinguish the flame. Everyone took a few steps forward and appeared in a huge bright hall. Chapter 456. Everyone exclaimed out loud. This hall was even bigger than the main hall of the Pure Yang Palace. It was more than enough for thousands of disciples to stand in it. The hall was empty, except for the place where they had just come in, which looked like a decorated portal from the hall. There was not even a place to sit in other places. There was no pillar in the entire huge hall, and it was even more empty. There were hundreds of shining spheres at the top of the hall, illuminating the entire hall as bright as day. On the other side of the hall, there were 5 glowing portal-like things. There was nothing in other places, except for the neat jade bricks on the floor. There was nothing else. That should be the exit. Yang Chen probably knew something and pointed to the opposite portal. Everyone had no opinion. Following Yang Chen, they carefully came to the front of the row of portals. Then, Gao Yu turned to ask Yang Chen, which door should we go? Before waiting for Yang Chen to answer, Shi Kuei had directly put his hand on the rightmost portal. Yang Chen was shocked, but it was too late. The white light flashed fiercely, and then Shi Kuei's body seemed to be thrown up by a huge force, far away to the other end of the hall. When everyone hurriedly ran over to help Shi Kuei up, Shi Kuei slowly regained his breath. Looking at Yang Chen, who was checking his body in a hurry, he hurriedly shouted, "I'm fine. I'm fine." Casually throwing a Yuanying stage master so easily, The meaning contained in this was simply desperate. Shi Kuei was just thrown to this side, but there was no internal injury. He quickly stood up and made a few casual movements, and he didn't look sad. Everyone's eyes were focused on Yang Chen, waiting for him to solve their doubts. Yang Chen pointed to Shi Kuei with a bitter smile. It was really hard to say anything, so he could only shake his head. The 5 portals are divided by cultivation base. Yang Chen did not let everyone continue to be confused, and explained, different cultivation bases can enter different portals. The rightmost one is for masters of the Deshang stage to enter. Everyone came to a sudden realization. If that was the case, then the 5 gates represented the Qi refining, foundation establishment, golden core, nascent soul, and great ascension stage respectively. Experts could enter the door below, but mediocre people would never be able to enter the door above. Even if they hid in an expert's herb garden or another space, it was impossible. This time, Shi Kuei and Xie Sha did not dare to be reckless. A door easily made them realize that they were not strong here. No one had been to this place before, so everyone unanimously decided to first go to the Qi condensation realm portal to take a look. If there was any accident, these experts could also safely retreat at any time. Sure enough, when he reached the leftmost door this time, there was no obstruction at all. It was as if the outside was empty. Yang Chen retracted his hand and nodded to Shi Kuei and Xie Sha. The 2 of them immediately held their own life source magic weapons and rushed out. Following them were Yang Chen, Gao Yu, and Gong Sunling. The scenery in front of them suddenly changed. Suddenly, everyone was suddenly on a huge piece of land. Mountains, rivers, grasslands, forests, everything was there. Everyone was stunned. Sure enough, it was worthy of being a magic weapon of the Grotto Heaven level. It was only the territory of the Qi condensation realm, but it was so big. Yang Chen rose into the air, and roughly estimated that it was almost 1,000 miles in radius. The place where they were was the exit of a huge palace. Under their feet was a large-scale palace complex. The entire palace complex was located on a mountain and covered the entire mountain. What was surprising was that it was unexpectedly quiet here, and there was no other sound at all. In the middle of the huge palace complex, the silence made people feel a little weak. Let's see if there is anything worth collecting. Yang Chen suddenly became excited. I said to bring you to make a fortune, let's see how your luck is. Everyone once again looked at Yang Chen in amazement and saw that he was very serious. They all cheered and were about to leave. Wait! Yang Chen suddenly stopped everyone. This is the place where the disciples of the Qi condensation realm are. If you encounter monsters and puppets, don't kill them if you can. In the future, let the low-level disciples come here to gain experience. Everyone agreed. Yang Chen added a sentence like an old woman, the things are the same. If you can't use them, don't be greedy. Leave some for the younger generation. Good things can be found in a high-level place. Got it. Long-winded. Gao Yu smiled at Yang Chen and said impatiently. Then she directly set up the flying sword, and began to circle in the palace complex. Yang Chen was also curious. He slowly walked and approached the nearest palace. After glancing around, he found that this was simply a fully functional sect base. All kinds of halls, various disciples' residences, etc. The division was very detailed. The only thing that felt strange was that there was no one inside, but it was spotless. Soon, Yang Chen found that there was an extremely hidden aperture outside the palace complex. When his spiritual awareness swept over, he almost skipped it. Only the powerful spiritual awareness of the 3 purities' secret art could detect it. After observing for a while, Yang Chen finally determined that this aperture that everyone could not see was simply a boundary. Out of this circle, there was the aura of a monster, and after approaching, the aura of a monster was immediately restrained. In other words, this circle was a safe zone. After discovering this, Yang Chen was quite speechless. This was not just a sect base. It was clear that even the sect base with combat experience was fully equipped. It was simply the most suitable place for the mountain gate. It was completely a Taoist field. After entering here, he felt the abundant spiritual power, which was quite a bit of the flavor of the Fierce Sun Courtyard. Although it was not as strong as the Fierce Sun Courtyard, this was a place where the disciples of the Qi refining stage were. When he arrived at the site of the Foundation Establishment stage, Jedon stage and Yuanying stage, who knows if there would be a bigger surprise? Yang Chun, come quickly! Gong Sunling suddenly sent a sound transmission from afar, spreading far away in the empty and silent place. Yang Chen was shocked and hurriedly flew over, but saw Gong Sunling standing in front of a huge palace. There was a long plaque above the entrance of the palace, with 3 big words written in ancient characters, Scripture Depository. Seeing that Gong Sunling was fine, Yang Chen was a little relieved, and then he looked into the Scripture Depository. It didn't look special, but when Yang Chen stepped into the Scripture Depository, he was stunned. There were hundreds of huge bookshelves with countless jade slips neatly placed on them. This Scripture Depository was not empty. Chapter 457. Gong Sunling's cry attracted everyone to come here. Looking at this scene, everyone's faces were full of surprise. Everyone understood that no matter what medicinal materials and magic weapons could be found, it was not comparable to the inheritance of a sect. And these densely packed jade slips were the inheritance of the sect. What are you looking at? Put it away. Yang Chen saw that everyone was standing in a daze, and hurriedly shouted, reminding everyone what to do. Who knows what danger there is? Let's put it away first. Everyone woke up like a dream, and hurriedly under the leadership of Yang Chen, they were divided into several directions and began to put the jade slips on these bookshelves into the Qiankuan bag. There was no time to look at it, just put it away first, and then open it later. After being busy for almost half an hour, all these things were put away by everyone. After all this was done, everyone looked at each other and smiled. There must be other levels. Gao Yu suddenly woke up and screamed again, reminding everyone. Everyone didn't say anything and went straight to the door of the hall that they had just come out of. After rushing in, they returned to the hall. Yang Chen pointed directly at Shi Kuei and Xiesha. You, one go to the Yuanying stage, one go to the Jedon stage, and the other go to the Jedon stage. Let's loot everything in the Scripture Pavilion first. Except for Yang Chen, no one knew if there would be any other changes in this Immortal's cave. Hearing Yang Chen's words, Shi Kuei and Xiesha didn't say anything and directly rushed into the 3rd and 4th portals. Yang Chen pointed to the 2nd portal and said, Master, Senior Sister, let's go into this. After that, he took the first step and stepped into the door. The scene changed again. It was a little different from the previous one, but the structure was much the same. The 3 quickly found the location of the Scripture Pavilion. Sure enough, as everyone expected, the Scripture Pavilion of the Foundation Establishment stage was also full of jade slip. At this time, no one was polite. First take the things, and then talk about other things. After a period of chaos, the Scripture Pavilion of the Foundation Establishment stage was also ransacked by the 3 people. Back in the original hall, Shi Kuei and Xiesha had not come out. After all, they were collecting alone, not as fast as Yang Chen and the others, and it would take longer. After waiting for about an hour, Shi Kuei and Xiesha finally returned to the hall. However, the faces of the 2 were not very good. What, is there a problem inside? Yang Chen hurriedly asked. I found a gold core stage monster at the foot of the mountain. Shi Kuei went to the territory of the gold core stage and immediately said, but it did not enter inside. The Yuanying stage is the same, but it is a very powerful puppet. Xiesha also said. Xiesha said. At Xie. Yang Chen already knew this, but it would be more interesting to let others discover it. By now, everyone had reacted and guessed the greatest use of this cave abode. What should I do with these things? Gao Yu stared blankly at the jade slips that almost filled 4 Qiankuan bags, and was somewhat at a loss. When they took it, they couldn't wait to take all the things, but when they had to deal with it, they found that there were too many things. Even in a second-rate sect like Chunyang Palace, there were millions of jade slips in the scripture pavilion of the sect, which recorded all kinds of things: cultivation methods, alchemy, refining, arrays, various cultivation experiences, and miscellaneous records in various aspects. Now this Taoist field was several times the size of the Pure Yang Palace. There were millions of jade slips that were harvested by everyone. How to deal with so many things obviously made everyone fall into confusion. Here you go. Shi Kuei and Xie Sha were very happy, and they directly threw the Qiankuan bag with the jade slips to Yang Chen. They were monsters. It didn't make sense to use these human cultivation methods. It was better to give them to Yang Chen. After Yang Chen classified them, if there was something they needed, Yang Chen would not be stingy. At this point, Yang Chen had proved it countless times, so the two of them were not worried at all. With Shi Kuei and Xie Sha as an example, Gao Yu and Gong Sunling looked at each other and suddenly smiled tacitly. They also threw the Qiankuan bag to Yang Chen. Yang Chen, you have to work hard to classify them. If there is something we need, give it to us. Everyone knew in their hearts that it was impossible for them to monopolize such a huge Taoist field. However, it didn't seem reasonable to simply hand it over to the sect. Yang Chen had helped the sect to take down the Shirwan Mountains. If he handed over such a powerful Taoist field to the sect in a short time, it would definitely attract many people's attention. What Yang Chen had done now was shocking enough. If he did this again, it was estimated that even people in the sect would not be able to stand it. One person had enough of everyone's limelight, which was obviously not a good phenomenon. Therefore, this place would be their private Taoist field for a long time. Whoever discovered it was who owned it. This point had long been decided by the sect. These jade slips and things like inheritance were naturally owned by them. However, thinking of the place pointed out by Yang Chen, coupled with Yang Chen's habit of reading books all over the world, these things were the most appropriate to hand over to Yang Chen. Yang Chen brought them over. Of course, if they encountered something suitable, he would not hide it. Otherwise, he would not have told everyone. Everyone knew this in their hearts. After collecting the jade slips, everyone sat in the hall again and discussed what to do next. After discovering that the monster beasts and puppets could not enter a certain circle, everyone's heart was alive. This was simply the most suitable place for actual combat cultivation. It was not easy to come here, and it must not be easily wasted. Presumably, everyone has found that this place is very suitable for everyone to cultivate. Yang Chen gave the answer, "Let's just cultivate here, how about it?" This proposal was unanimously agreed by everyone. With the existence of the safety line, it had given enough security for everyone's experience. Shi Kuei and Xie Sha did not hesitate at all, and rushed straight back to the trial gate of the Yuanying stage. Gong Sunling looked at Yang Chen and Gao Yu. She also stood up and said something to Gao Yu and Yang Chen. She entered the trial gate of the Foundation establishment stage, leaving only Yang Chen and Gao Yu in the hall. "Yang Chen, when will you give this to the sect?" Gao Yu thought about it and felt that it was better to ask clearly, so she still faced Yang Chen and asked the question she had wanted to ask for a long time. "When Master becomes a senior member of the Chunyang Palace, or before my Chunyang Palace is destroyed." Yang Chen gave the answer with a smile. This was Yang Chen's original plan. "Senior member?" Gao Yu shook her head. "Don't think about these illusory things. Yang Chen, in your opinion, which sect is the best for your master's trial?" Chapter 458. Foundation Establishment Stage. Yang Chen said without hesitation, "Qi refining stage is no longer necessary, but it is better to accumulate combat experience from low-level battles. Step by step, it is more solid. In addition, sometimes Master can try to not deliberately kill those monsters, but capture them alive. This is more difficult. Okay, then I will go to the foundation establishment stage. Gao Yu nodded without any objection and asked again, "What about you?" In Gao Yu's mind, it seemed that Yang Chen had never carefully carried out combat experience, and he seemed to know everything. Sometimes Gao Yu could not judge what level Yang Chen was at. Disciple will also go to the foundation establishment stage. Yang Chen smiled, but forget about fighting, disciple will go over there and carefully look at these jade slips. It seemed that she had guessed that Yang Chen was thinking like this, and Gao Yu was not surprised at all. She nodded and said to Yang Chen, "What are you waiting for? Let's go." Yang Chen got up and followed Gao Yu into the foundation establishment stage. Gong Xuanling's figure had disappeared from his field of vision, presumably she had rushed outside. Gao Yu did not say much, found a direction, and flew on her sword. As for Yang Chen himself, he walked around casually, found a place with the strongest spiritual power, put down the black jade futon, and sat directly on it. He began to open the Qiankuan bag, and read the newly obtained jade slips one by one. The jade slips were still divided into different colors according to the applicable realm, which was very easy to distinguish. However, the specific content was mixed together, and Yang Chen needed to carefully separate it bit by bit. When it was on the bookshelf, it was so messy. This disappeared sect inherited the consistent tradition of the cultivation world, leaving it to fate. Most of the jade slips weren't categorized into different categories. There were millions of jade slips, of course, it was impossible for Yang Chen to read them in a short time, so Yang Chen first looked at the cultivation methods inside to see if there was anything that could make his eyes light up. Things from 10,000 years ago might be fundamentally different from what they were now. However, while looking for cultivation techniques, Yang Chen also glanced at the general contents inside and categorized them. He kept them separately according to cultivation techniques, formations, alchemy, refining weapons, cultivation experience, miscellaneous, and so on. Of course, he still started his search from the foundation establishment realm. However, after looking at hundreds of cultivation methods in a row, Yang Chen found that the world of cultivation was indeed constantly developing. The cultivation methods from 10,000 years ago were already somewhat outdated. In some aspects, it could even be said to be in conflict with modern cultivation methods. In the past 10,000 years, many cultivation methods had changed. They involved more meridians and were more extensive. In terms of the efficiency of spirit power absorption, it was impossible to be compared to the past. The cultivation world was also changing with each passing day. It was almost impossible for those who wanted to dominate the world just because they were lucky enough to find an ancient cultivation method. After tens of thousands of years of research by countless experts, the overall level of the cultivation method had been pushed up by at least 2 levels. Up until now, every sect had a hall of experts that specialized in the study of cultivation method. So much so that in many cases, the big sects would even sell some of the sects' outdated cultivation methods to the small sects and rogue cultivators. Of course, such cultivation methods would also flow to other big sects, and there would also be special people to study, eliminate the waste and retain the essence, and absorb the experience of others to enrich their own cultivation method. This was also the reason why Yang Chen did not care much about the choice of low-level cultivation method. After this kind of research and exchange, in fact, there was not much difference in the cultivation effect between different cultivation methods, it was just that the cultivation conditions were different. However, high-level cultivation methods were not like this. Usually, after the cultivation of the Yuanying stage and above, in addition to daily homework, most of the improvement of cultivation depended on the grasp of the state of mind and the understanding of certain rules, not just the hard work of cultivation. This was why people with mediocre qualifications, after reaching the Yuanying stage, would quickly pull apart the gap between them and those cultivation geniuses. Originally, it might only be 100 years of cultivation difference, But once they reached the yuanying stage, it would immediately be a world of difference. Yang Chen looked at these, just for reference, not what he wanted to do. Immersed in the process of reading and classifying, time passed unconsciously. Yang Chen did not even feel how much time had passed, but Gao Yu told him that a whole year had passed. During this year, others did not disturb Yang Chen much, and they were all cultivating separately. It had to be said that this kind of battle was the fastest way to grow. When encountering a monster that they couldn't defeat, they would run back and desperately think of ways to improve their strength, wanting to get back at the monster. That kind of feeling was the best way to stimulate their cultivation. During this year, Gong Xuanling's temperament had changed greatly. She was no longer the kind of calm cloud and breeze before, but was full of a kind of potential aggression, which made people feel that she was not easy to deal with at first glance. In the past, most of the people in Chunyang Palace followed the creed of, "A man does not fight, so no one can fight with him." It could be said to be neutral and peaceful, the best way to nurture one's qi. However, this was also very easy to leave the disciples with the idea of standing aloof from the world. Although their state of mind was improved very quickly, when they really faced heaven's retribution, they lacked a kind of ruthlessness and determination. Many people died because of this, including Gong Sunling in the previous life. Now it seemed that Gong Sunling had no such possibility at all. This was a welcome change. In fact, since the high level began to conspire to take down the Shirwan Mountains, this concept began to slowly change. From not fighting to fighting, they began to fight. If it weren't for Yang Chen stopping reading without distractions, Gao Yu and Gong Sunling would not have come to disturb him. It was because Yang Chen himself withdrew from this state that the two women discovered it and came to his side at the first time. The reason why he did not continue was that Yang Chen found something that surprised him. Among the millions of jade slips, Yang Chen found the 9th Water True Secret Art, in the Great Yin and Yang 5 Elements Secret Art that he could not find. This was mixed in the yuanying stage cultivation method, and it was also annotated that it was difficult to cultivate. It may be that people at that time did not know that the 9th Water True Secret Art needed to be combined with the 9th Water True Essence to be truly cultivated. It was an unexpected surprise. Although this was a 9th Water True Secret Art from 10,000 years ago, which of the Great Yin and Yang 5 Elements Secret Art passed down by those old guys had not experienced tens of thousands of years. This most primitive cultivation method had almost no room for improvement for a long time. With this 9th Water True Secret Art, Yang Chen's Great Yin and Yang 5 Elements Secret Art had already collected 8 kinds, and only 2 kinds had not been found. Chapter 459. Yang Chen did not expect that the Blue Vault Mountains Immortal's cave would bring him such a surprise. It was a bit unexpected. It seems that it is necessary to go to all the places where the immortals in his memory left in the mortal world. Maybe there are similar surprises. When Yang Chen was in the mortal world in his previous life, he had no chance to come into contact with such advanced things. At most, he only heard that there were some good things that caused countless sects to compete. Among them, there were some Yin-Yang 5 Elements True Essence, such as the 5th Earth True Essence of the Barren Valley. The Great Yin and Yang 5 Elements Secret Art. Now there are still 2 kinds that have not been collected. One is the 3rd Fire True Secret Art, the other is the 6th Earth True Secret Art. There is already hope of completion. Although the remaining 2 kinds of Yang Chen's memory do not know where they are, but Yang Chen believes that finding these 2 kinds will never be more difficult than his own rebirth. Now it is necessary to quickly impact his own strength. The realm of the foundation stage, in the face of this level of cultivation method, is really not enough. Although Yang Chen himself has cultivated the 5th Earth True Secret Art and the 7th Metal True Secret Art, it is under the chance coincidence, and the key is that the absorption of the 5th Earth True Essence and the 7th Metal True Essence is in a safe environment. As far as Yang Chen knows, the other Yin-Yang 5 Elements True Essence that he knows are basically in very dangerous places. With the current strength of Yangchen, there is no way to go. What good things did you find? Although Gao Yu and Gong Sunling seemed to have experienced some vicissitudes of life after the battle, but the joy on their faces was not concealed in front of him, Yang Chen couldn't help but ask. It's not a good thing, just a few monsters. Gong Sunling replied with a smile, and Gao Yu next to her also nodded. Monsters are worthy of you being so happy? Yang Chen would not believe the words of the two women. It was just a monster. It was not worth it. His heart moved, and he immediately guessed something. He smiled and asked, "Senior sister, did you find some strange formations? I know I can't hide it from you." The smile on Gong Sunling's face turned into a complaint. "Don't you know how to play dumb? Guess what kind of formation it is?" Yang Chen stared at Gong Sunling for a while, making Gong Sunling feel uncomfortable all over. Her face couldn't help but turn half red before she smiled and said, "Actually, the most worth studying here is the graded formation and the safety line formation in the hall. As for the others, there isn't much worth looking at. Senior sister, did I guess correctly?" This time, even Gao Yu was a little stunned and suddenly said, "Then what did you say I found? Master must have discovered some unique refining method, right?" Yang Chen thought of a direction in the blink of an eye. "Or maybe he picked up some fragments of magic treasures that can be used as a reference." Gao Yu's face also showed a look of surprise. She looked at Yang Chen and said with some reluctance, "If I didn't watch you cultivate to where you are now, I would really think you are a monster. If that's the case, there are a few pieces of jade slips here that are worth looking at." Yang Chen directly found a few pieces from the jade slips he had read and gave them to the two. However, the idea is worth referring to, but the refining method and the formation method are not worth looking at. This was deliberately left by Yang Chen for them. Of course, there were more advanced ones, but now it was not suitable for them to see. Moreover, Yang Chen did not think that those outdated things were worth the effort of his master and senior sister. The key was to absorb the creativity, not the method. The two women took it as if they had found a treasure. It couldn't be helped that Yang Chen's guess was really right. Gong Sunling felt strange about the formation of the safe zone and the graded formation. Not to mention, it could keep the monster of the Yuanying stage out, and it could easily bounce Shi Kuei and Xiesha. That formation was an excellent protective formation. As for Gao Yu, in some of the magic weapon fragments she occasionally saw, she also found a very strange refining idea, which was completely different from the current mainstream refining method. She was originally a fire cultivator and liked to refine. After discovering it, she immediately became interested. However, the two women did not spend too much time on this. Yang Chen was sorting so many jade slips, there must be something recorded in them. Sure enough, just mentioning it, Yang Chen found it. Yang Chen made it clear that these could refer to the creativity of the predecessors, but they could not learn their technique. Both women also understood that in the past 10,000 years, various cultivation methods have made great progress, and naturally they would not neglect the essentials. In this Immortal's cave, the most important thing was to carry out the kind of combat experience, even the experience of facing life and death. After the two women got the jade slip, they did not immediately study it, but took a break and went out again to continue fighting. No one would ask Yang Chen why he didn't need to participate in this kind of experience. The two women seemed to understand that Yang Chen didn't need this. Yang Chen watched the back of the two women disappear. He stood up and stretched his muscles and bones. Looking at the layers of palaces, he suddenly felt relaxed. If his life was spent like this, wouldn't it be a wonderful thing? Unfortunately, this was just a small wish. The road of cultivation was not so peaceful. Even if he stood aloof from the world, there was still a heavenly tribulation coming, and Yang Chen couldn't be so relaxed. After some activities, Yang Chen sat down again and began to continue his exploration process among the millions of jade slip. With the previous 9th Water True Secret Art, Yang Chen believed that there would be similar treasures hidden in these millions of jade slips, waiting for his discovery. Of course, even in this process, Yang Chen did not forget to cultivate. The third layer of the three purities secret art has almost never stopped, and it has been running constantly, so that Yang Chen can always keep a clear mind and exuberant energy. Every time he looked at hundreds of jade slips, Yang Chen would stop and practice a cycle of yin and yang 5 elements secret art. Cultivation was not a matter of epiphany overnight, but it took a long time to persist. In this regard, whether it was Yang Chen or Gao Yugong Sunling, or Shi Kuei and Xiesha, they have never slacked off. Hard work pays off. When Yang Chen sat here again for almost half a year, he finally found a cultivation method that made Yang Chen very surprised in a large pile of jade slip. This cultivation method was said to be an accident, because this was for some handymen of the heavenly court to cultivate. It should not appear in the mortal world at all. It was possible to come into contact with the cultivation method of the heavenly court after the body went to the immortal world and joined the heavenly court. This cultivation method was called Yellow Turban Strongman Body Refining Technique. Chapter 460. The Yellow Turban Strongman was the handyman of the heavenly court. It was generally prepared for those who were not strong enough to do odd jobs. Of course, the premise was that there must be the potential to practice this technique, the body must be strong, and the strength must be enough. The premise of practicing this technique was that there must be at least 1,000 caddies of strength. This was not the power after the operation, but the pure physical strength. A jun was equivalent to 30 jin. The strength of 1,000 caddies was to have the strength of 30,000 jin. It was almost impossible to achieve this kind of power with the body alone. However, before the Yellow Turban Strongman began to practice this body refining technique, he still needed to practice a lot of auxiliary techniques to reach this standard, and then he could really start to practice the Yellow Turban Strongman body refining technique. In the minds of ordinary people, the Yellow Turban Strongman was just a handyman like carrying heavy objects. In fact, this was indeed the case. The Yellow Turban Strongman was only powerful, but his combat effectiveness was not strong. In the heavenly court, he could only be this kind of low-level hard labor. However, the Yellow Turban Strongman was not just this. When the strength was large to a certain extent, it could show a kind of terrifying strength that was not even inferior to the great magical power. For example, the two sons of Kwa Yi and the foolish old man moving the mountains could carry Taihang Mountain and Wangu Mountain and put them elsewhere at will. That was almost comparable to the magical power of moving the mountains and the sea. When the power reached the extreme, it was also a very terrifying thing. However, unless there was no other way out, no one would practice this technique. But for Yang Chen, this Yellow Turban Strongman body refining technique was a benefit that fell from the sky. The surprise brought to him by the Blue Vault Mountain Immortal's cave was not only a complete Taoist field and ninth water true secret art, but now there was a Yellow Turban Strongman body refining technique. In the mortal world, it was almost impossible for others to reach the level of physical strength of 1,000 caddies. But Yang Chen was different. The body nourished by the life essence of tens of thousands of immortals was already excellent to the point that it could not be better. In addition, Yang Chen did not cultivate at the beginning, but carried out physical exercise. When he first joined the Chunyang Palace, his physical condition was already very good. At that time, Yang Chen single-handedly took Shen Da's iron rod strengthened with 15 caddies talismans. Although 15 caddies talismans could not really reach the strength of 15 caddies talismans, but the iron rod strengthened by 7 or 8 15 caddies talismans was at least about 10,000 jin. Even Shunda, because he was the owner of the rune weapon, he was not affected by the 15 caddies talismans, so he could not pick it up at all. At that time, Yang Chen had just entered the qi refining stage, but now Yang Chen had already built the foundation of the 10 spirit powers. His body had been further nourished by the spirit power of heaven and earth, and had already reached a higher level. Although Yang Chen had not simply tempered his body for a long time, the foundation of the body was there, and it would never disappear. Yang Chen did not try whether he had the power of 1,000 jin, but since he had such a powerful cultivation method, wouldn't it be unfair to himself if he didn't cultivate it? Think about it, when Yang Chen holds the immortal beheading blade that is possessed by Yazi, and his spiritual awareness and physical body are waved at the same time, who can resist? The physical strength that could move the mountains and the sea, coupled with the spiritual awareness condensed by the three purities' secret art, coupled with Yazi's immortal beheading blade's characteristics of destroying evil, breaking weapons, and cutting everything, any opponent in front of Yang Chen could not escape the fate of being cut in half. The cultivation method used by low-level handymen can't be put on the table? Yang Chen would not have such an idea at all. In Yang Chen's heart, there was no distinction between noble power or humble power, only the most correct power. However, the requirements for practicing the yellow turban strongman body refining technique were very strict. If one could not reach the strength of 15 caddies, the body could not withstand the strong pressure brought by the cultivation, and the body would crack and die directly. Yang Chen could only test it first to see if he had the strength of 15 caddies. Otherwise, it would not be such a fun thing to crack and die while practicing. There were things to test here. Yang Chen casually found a lot of stones and roughly calculated that there should be more than 30,000 jin in weight. These stones were simply refined into a stone pillar with a handle. Not at ease, he added about 1,000 jin of stones to fuse together and then began the test. For a long time, he had not simply used his physical strength. Yang Chen first practiced the body refining boxing technique before practicing it. After moving his body, he grabbed the two steel handles, squatted down and began to exert his strength. After a slight shake, the huge stone pillar began to slowly leave the ground. Under the outbreak of Yang Chen's whole body strength, it was lifted high above the head by Yang Chen. Boom! The huge stone pillar, which was almost 3 times the height of Yang Chen, was directly thrown to the ground by Yang Chen. The weight of almost 35,000 jin, although Yang Chen was not so easy, he did not try his best to lift it. This fully shows that Yang Chen's body already has the basic conditions to practice the yellow turban strongman body refining technique, and he can practice this cultivation method that purely enhances physical strength and strength. When Gao Yu and Gong Sunling discovered the strangeness of Yang Chen was sitting there and practicing this yellow turban strongman body refining technique. The reason why he showed strangeness was that Yang Chen's body seemed to suddenly begin to inflate from the inside. From time to time, there was a bulge here and a ridge there. There seemed to be a monster under the body that was constantly arching outward. It was very strange. The two women were a little surprised, but no one dared to move Yang Chen. Yang Chen's expression still looked very serene. This must be a strange cultivation method that Yang Chen found here. However, didn't Yang Chen ask them to only refer to creativity and ideas and not to refer to the cultivation method? How could Yang Chen cultivate the cultivation method here? The changes in Yang Chen's body are still continuing. Every muscle in his body seems to be being strongly hammered and condensed. Every muscle is condensing more powerful than before. During the cultivation, Yang Chen did not find that his body seemed to have begun to become strong in a short period of time. The muscles were faintly bulging all over the body. When all the muscle changes stopped, Yang Chen finally completed the first cultivation of the yellow turban strongman body refining technique. After finishing, Yang Chen instantly noticed the existence of Gao Yu and Gong Sunling. What's wrong? It took Yang Chen half a month to practice this body refining technique for the first time. However, Yang Chen did not feel that the two women needed to be surprised. It's just that the expressions on the faces of his master and senior sister standing in front of him did not look calm. Why is this? Chapter 461. After speaking, Yang Chen couldn't help but look down at his body, but he was stunned. He didn't know when the robe on his body had become smaller. Although it wasn't tight on his body, it still looked very comical. With a sweep of his spiritual awareness, he suddenly understood everything. In this short period of practicing the yellow turban strongman body refining technique for more than 10 days, Yang Chen's figure had grown taller again, and his figure was no longer as well proportioned as before, but he had become a muscular man. For cultivators, especially those who had reached the foundation establishment stage, when the spiritual power of heaven and earth entered the body, it would automatically transform the body. Under normal circumstances, it was rare to have strong muscles. In most cases, it was a well-proportioned body. Whether it was strength or coordination, it had a very good effect. But now, Yang Chen had become an inflated muscle man. His whole body was full of explosive muscles, and at first glance, he was a person full of power. However, such a body shape could not increase much advantage in the battle between cultivators, and few people would be willing to make themselves look like this. Only some unique physique cultivators would have such a body shape. What happened to Yang Chen? How did he suddenly become like this? Gao Yu and Gong Sunling were both puzzled. As soon as he stood up, Yang Chen found that he was originally taller than the two women, and now he was a lot taller, and he needed to lower his head to look at them. Looking at his own robe that had become obviously short, Yang Chen shook his head with a wry smile and explained, "I came across a good cultivation method, I tried it, and it became like this." Not far from him was the huge stone pillar, and the two women could see what it was for. Looking at the funny appearance of Yang Chen wearing such an unsuitable robe, the two women couldn't help but laugh and opened their mouth. They were not worried at all that Yang Chen would practice any inappropriate cultivation method that would lead to problems in cultivation. In this regard, Yang Chen's experience and insight could close his eyes and leave them 10 streets away. But looking at Yang Chen's rare embarrassment, he couldn't help but want to laugh. Yang Chen knew that his appearance was comical, so he ignored the expressions of the two and walked directly to the side of the large stone pillar. Before he could bend down and try, Gong Sunling had already taken a step forward and shouted, "Let me try." Stepping aside, Yang Chen did not argue with Gong Sunling. Gong Sunling walked over and grabbed the two metal handles made by Yang Chen with both hands. She channeled her qi and used her spiritual power. The huge stone pillar was slowly picked up by Gong Sunling from the ground and lifted over her head. A slender woman was holding up a stone pillar that was nearly 30 feet long and several times thicker than her waist. If an ordinary person were to see this scene, they would definitely be shocked. But here, in the eyes of Yang Chen and Gao Yu, there was nothing surprising. If a late-stage foundation establishment cultivator couldn't even lift the weight of 1,000 caddies, then they were really too weak. "Yang Chen, what's the use of cultivating this?" Gong Sunling easily put the stone pillar back on the ground. Her face was not red and she was not out of breath. She was very relaxed. "It's not very difficult to do. I saw this cultivation method and felt that I could cultivate it, so I just wanted to try it." Yang Chen did not explain in detail. Some things could not be explained clearly, and they would not know how powerful this cultivation method that could only be cultivated in the heavenly court was. He could only use such a perfunctory sentence. In addition, although it's not difficult, it's not that easy. Yang Chen added again, took a few steps forward and walked to the side of the stone pillar. He lightly kicked a corner of the stone pillar with the tip of his foot. The big stone pillar seemed to be suddenly hit by a huge force and flew up high with a loud bang. When it fell with a heavy momentum, Yang Chen stretched out his hand and grabbed a metal handle in mid-air. He grabbed the huge stone pillar out of thin air and suspended it in the air. All the weight was under the control of one arm of Yang Chen. Holding this metal handle, Yang Chen easily swung the big stone pillar. In the terrifying whistling sound of the wind, the big stone pillar was like an eyebrow staff in Yang Chen's hand. He actually danced a set of staff technique. However, whether it was smashing down or sweeping horizontally, It did not touch anything. It only smashed and swept in the air. After performing a set of staff techniques, Yang Chen gently pulled a flower and lightly erected the big stone pillar beside him. It was not a speck of dust. The huge stone pillar was like a piece of paper in his hands. Gong Sunling looked at Yang Chen's set of movements and couldn't help but laugh again, even laughing so hard that she couldn't even straighten her waist. Although Gao Yu next to her was not as exaggerated as Gong Sunling, she still covered her mouth and her shoulders were shaking. It was really that Yang Chen's clothes and body shape were too unsuitable. No matter how handsome Yang Chen's movements were, it was like playing a monkey show. It does look like he is a little stronger. Finally, the two women stopped laughing and Gong Sunling still said with a smile, "But it's not as difficult as you said, right? Shaoling Yang Chen, we can't do it." Gao Yu next to her no longer laughed, and pointed to Gong Sunling and said, "When he did this, he did not use his power." After all, she was in the realm of the Jedon stage, and her eyesight and judgment were much higher than that of Gong Sunling. At a glance, she could see the power of Yang Chen. Gong Sunling was also a smart person. She immediately realized what this meant. She was stunned for a while and could no longer laugh. He could swing a huge stone pillar that weighed more than 1,000 caddies by relying on his body alone. How terrifying would it be if he used his power? They had long heard that Yang Chen's strength was amazing. Before he started cultivating, he was able to knock Sun Haijing out with the 1,000 caddies talisman. The two women did not expect that Yang Chen's pure physical strength would be strong to this point. For a time, even Gao Yu began to be shocked. That was a huge stone pillar that weighed nearly 35,000 caddies. In the hands of Yang Chen, it was as light as nothing. It was so easy to play with one hand. How powerful was Yang Chen's strength now? The two women could hardly imagine it. Was he still a human being? Yang Chen was now feeling indescribably happy. It was only the first time he cultivated, and his physical strength had increased nearly 5 times, close to the terrifying strength of 200,000 caddies. If he continued to cultivate in this way, relying on his body alone, Yang Chen would be able to withstand the golden seal that was smashed by the guy who used the golden seal. What's more, this yellow turban strongman body refining technique was not only to increase the physical strength, but also to refine the body. Even the strength of the whole body has been greatly improved. From the inside to the outside, from the bone marrow to the skin, it has undergone a complex strengthening. The structure of the body is getting stronger and stronger, and even the protective power has increased several times. Chapter 462. The bones were the backbone of the body. If the body wanted to withstand the huge force of 200,000 jin, then the bones must be able to withstand more pressure than this. The same was true for muscles. Yang Chen knew that this was far from the end, this was just the result of the first cultivation. In the long run, the structure of the body would become stronger and stronger. Even in the future, without relying on protective magic weapons, the physical strength alone could block most of the attacks of magic weapons. The only shortcoming of the yellow turban strongman was speed, but in this aspect, Yang Chen would never be lacking. Those strongmen did not have the qualifications to practice other cultivation methods, but now Yang Chen did not have such a problem at all. Moreover, Yang Chen knew that the yellow turban strongman's cultivation method, when cultivated to the extreme, the body would also undergo tremendous changes. It would never maintain the current strongman body shape, and it would eventually tend to the well-proportioned elegance of the cultivators, but the strength of the strength would not change at all. After ascending to the heavenly court, it was unlikely that there would be too many opportunities to change the body shape, unless the cultivation base reached the level of Great Principle Golden Immortal. Few people among the yellow turban strongmen could reach this level, so they had always been so strong. Yang Chen began to cultivate from the mortal world, and there were still 2 opportunities to ascend. Changing the body shape was only a matter of whether he was willing or not. Moreover, after ascending to the immortal world, there was a pure physical strength to practice this cultivation method, and Yang Chun started to cultivate at the age of a few decades. Who was higher and who was lower, even a fool could distinguish it. However, for a long time, Yang Chun could only maintain this body shape. At least until Yang Chen's yellow turban strongman body refining technique reached the great accomplishment realm, there would be changes. In this regard, Yang Chun did not care. Whether the cultivators were powerful or not, what did it have to do with their body shape? The current set of clothes was really unbearable. Every time they looked at it, the two women wanted to laugh. After Gao Yu and Gong Sunling laughed enough, they no longer went out to practice. Instead, they opened their Qianquan bags and began to rummage through a pile of demon beasts' corpses. They peeled off their fur and began to cut clothes for Yang Chun. Yang Chun had never thought that one day he would leisurely cook tea for his master and senior sister, watching them sew clothes for him using their slender hands to refine pills, forge weapons, and control the flying sword array. This warm feeling could even be compared with the moment when he got the bright ray sword. Neither of the two women was skillful, but they finally used the technique of controlling the flying sword to control the sewing needle. Coupled with Gao Yu's excellent level in refining, it took less than 2 days for the two women to complete a set of leather clothes and trousers made of demon beast skin. Not only was it sewn, but it was also simply refined by Gao Yu. However, it was only for Yang Chen's temporary use, and it didn't take too much thought. Even so, Yang Chen also happily rushed into the empty hall with the clothes and trousers and began to try them on. This time, the clothes and trousers were made according to the current body shape of Yang Chen. After putting it on, it was very fitting, especially when he thought that this was sewn by his master and senior sister in front of him. There was another strange comfortable feeling when he wore it. From the hall, he came to the front of Gao Yu and Gong Sunling. Although the two women had already designed this style when they sewed, when they saw Yang Chen wearing it, their eyes still lit up. Gao Yu was based on Yang Chen's current strong body shape, and specially designed a set of leather clothes and trousers with a strong style for him. Yang Chen wore it on his body, with the now bulging muscles. It was simply a living wild statue. The sense of power brought by the swollen muscles, and at the same time, the strong aura released by Yang Chen was simply intoxicating. Gong Sunling was the first to blush. You know, this clothes did not cover the whole body, and the shoulders and arms were exposed. There was more of a wildness. Even Gao Yu's face was red, and her eyes flickered a few times before she dared to return to Yang Chen. "Thank you, master. Thank you, senior sister." Yang Chen thanked the two women, and then very smugly puffed out his chest and said, "Master, senior sister's craftsmanship is really good. How do you look?" At first glance, it's a bodyguard. Gong Sunling joked with a smile, and Gao Yu also chuckled. This smile, on the contrary, did not have the embarrassment just now. "Well, master and senior sister's Immortal's cave will belong to me in the future." Yang Chen also joked, causing a burst of laughter. Next, Yang Chen asked about the results of the two women's experience and their future plans. Gong Sunling didn't care, and it was okay to keep practicing here, but Gao Yu knew that it was not okay. After a while, we have to go back to the sect. Gao Yu was the oldest among the three, and her words also had weight. Now Yang Chen is an important disciple of the sect, and he can't disappear for a long time for no reason. At least, we have to let the sect know that you are safe and sound. Otherwise, it will cause big trouble. Everyone knew the importance of Yang Chen in Chunyang Palace now. It didn't matter if he came out to practice for a year or two, but to stay outside for a long time was absolutely unacceptable to the sect. Gao Yu knew this, and so did Yang Chen. Then you take the time to practice for another half a year. After half a year, we will return to the sect. Yang Chen also nodded and agreed with Gao Yu's opinion. At the moment, the two women did not waste time. Once again, they stepped out of the safe zone and once again began to fight against the monsters and puppets. Yang Chen was still immersed in the process of reading the jade slip. Shi Kuei and Xie Sha would come over every once in a while, and Yang Chen would inform them at that time. This trip had been out for 2 years. He didn't know how the operation of the Shirwan Mountains was, and it was time to go back and see. Almost 5 months later, there was less than a month left from the appointment with Gao Yu and Gong Sunling. Yang Chen was reading the jade slips when he suddenly found some strange changes in the medicine garden of the pure bottle. The spiritual power in this immortal's cave was abundant. Yang Chen had already filled the spiritual power in the pure bottle, and the pure bottle could absorb it at any time, and it had always maintained a state of abundant spiritual power. But at this moment, Yang Chen found that the spiritual power in the pure bottle was declining rapidly. After a while, it had consumed nearly a quarter of the spiritual power, and this process was still continuing. Under the great shock, Yang Chen hurriedly controlled the pure bottle and began to absorb the spiritual power madly. At the same time, his spiritual awareness explored the pure bottle and began to explore what had happened that would cause such a change. As soon as the spiritual awareness explored the pure bottle, it encountered a huge spiritual resistance, and even Yang Chen's spiritual awareness could not go further. The source of the resistance seemed to appear on the side of his bright ray sword and blood phantom vine sword. There should be his own spiritual pet, Yazi. Chapter 463. Before feeding Shao Tian the blood essence of the howling celestial dog, Yang Chen and Shao Tian had completed the master-slave relationship between the spiritual pet and the master. The array had already taken effect in Yang Chen and Shao Tian. This kind of master-slave array, not to mention Shao Tian, was just a Yazi. Even if it was a real dragon, it could not be changed. For the last time, Yang Chen fed Shao Tian the remaining half of the blood essence of the howling celestial dog directly. The previous continuous feeding of a few spoonfuls had made Shao Tian completely adapt, and his figure had begun to change into a dragon body. After this feeding, the final result would also come out. Whether the blood of Shao Tian Yazi was completely stimulated, or only a part of it could be stimulated, it depended on when Shao Tian woke up this time. The movement of the spiritual power in the bottle, and the focus was concentrated on the place where Shao Tian formed a blood cocoon. There was no need to ask, it must be the final stimulation process to be completed. However, Yang Chen did not expect that Shao Tian needed such a huge amount of spiritual power to complete the blood stimulation. It was just such a short time. The spiritual power in the bottle had been consumed from a quarter to half, and the speed of the spiritual power decline was almost comparable to directly falling out. Under the great shock, Yang Chen immediately found an exit of the earth vein, put the bottle directly on it, urged the bottle and began to madly absorb the spiritual power of the earth vein. After the refining of the bottle by Yang Chen, it was easier for Yang Chen to control it. Of course, fortunately, there were sufficient spiritual veins in this immortal's cave. Otherwise, Yang Chen didn't even know if his own medicine garden's bottle could provide enough spiritual power. The bottle madly extracted the spiritual power, indicating that the remaining blue liquid in the bottle began to slowly rise. After all, this was a large immortal's cave, the abundance of spiritual power, even the mountain gate of Chunyang Palace could not compare. Naturally, it would not be unable to satisfy a pure bottle medicine garden. Even so, Yang Chen maintained this state for a full day and night. Such a huge spiritual power, all concentrated in the area of Shao Tian, and then disappeared. Yang Chen's divine sense was temporarily unable to penetrate the spiritual power circle, so he didn't know what was happening inside. In order to avoid the lack of spiritual power supply leading to the change of Shao Tian halfway, Yang Chen almost wholeheartedly controlled the absorption of the spirit power in the bottle. As long as the spirit power in the bottle was less than 90%, Yang Chen would quickly absorb it. Who knew if this change would suddenly increase the need for spiritual power after a period of time? Needless to say, Yang Chen's caution was necessary. After this day and night, the blood cocoon's absorption of spiritual power accelerated again. If it weren't for Yang Chen's control of the pure bottle's spiritual power to be higher than 90%, there might have been an accident where the spiritual power supply was suddenly cut off. At that moment, the absorption of spiritual power in a split second actually exceeded 80% of the spiritual power in the medicine garden's purified bottle. Under the great shock of Yang Chen, he almost desperately controlled the purified bottle and began to absorb the spiritual power crazily. This was the case where the spiritual power in the purified bottle was almost bottomed out, and the dangerous spiritual power was replenished again. Fortunately, this sudden absorption of spiritual power would only happen once in a while and not continuously. Even so, Yang Chen almost broke out in a cold sweat, controlling the purified bottle of the medicine garden and accelerating the speed of absorption. This kind of situation would happen every 2 hours. After Yang Chen mastered the law, he also dealt with it more carefully. He always kept the purified bottle's spiritual power in a full state. As long as there was a little spiritual power loss, it would be immediately replenished. In order to ensure that the spiritual power was sufficient, Yang Chen even used the control of the Blue Vault Mountain Immortal's cave and moved the spiritual veins in several other areas to his side. The spiritual power provided by several spiritual veins gathered together could make people go crazy. However, the more this was the case, the more happy Yang Chen's heart was. The more spiritual power absorbed, the more spiritual power needed to stimulate Xiao Tian's bloodline, which also meant that the effect of Xiao Tian's bloodline stimulation was more complete. The complete Yazi bloodline, thinking about it could make Yang Chen wake up from the most fearful nightmare. With such a mood, although the work of controlling the purified bottle to absorb spiritual power was boring, and he couldn't be distracted to cultivate, but Yang Chen was willing to endure it, and he wished that such a life would be as long as possible. It was the day of the appointment with Gao Yu and Gong Sunling, and even Shi Kuei and Xie Sha had come here. Yang Chen was not in the same place, and the 4 people quickly found Yang Chen's location, but they were shocked by Yang Chen's gesture, and at the same time, they were also shocked by the spiritual power of the 5 spiritual veins around Yang Chen. Yang Chen asked everyone to wait, and no one had any superfluous words. It just so happened that the spiritual power here was abundant, so everyone simply sat around Yang Chen and began to cultivate. However, the 4 of them, including the 2 Yuanying stage monsters, the spiritual power absorbed in a day was not even as much as the spiritual power of the purified bottle was absorbed in a short period of time. The place where spiritual awareness could not be detected was still so big. Yang Chen was a little worried about whether the Bright Ray Sword and the Blood Demon Vine Sword would be damaged. The Bright Ray Sword was a precious gift from his master. Yang Chen would rather the Blood Demon Vine Flying Sword be damaged than let the Bright Ray Sword have an accident. Fortunately, Xiao Tian has always liked the more advanced Flying Sword. The Blood Demon Vine Flying Sword was more advanced than the Bright Ray Sword, which was beyond doubt. He hoped that it could maintain this hobby in the process of stimulating its bloodline. Otherwise, Yang Chen really didn't know how he should face the situation of losing the Bright Ray Sword. After a full month, the process of the blood cocoon absorbing spiritual power stopped. Yang Chen's spiritual awareness could finally explore that area, but it could only explore the blood cocoon that wrapped Xiao Tian. What was the situation inside the blood cocoon? Yang Chen still couldn't know. Fortunately, the Bright Ray Sword and the Blood Demon Vine Sword were intact. Not only that, but even the 2 swords had some changes. It seemed that they had been washed by a lot of spiritual power, and there was a vague posture of removing impurities. Yang Chen even had some doubts. Was Xiao Tian crazy to absorb spiritual power through these 2 swords? He didn't know what was going on inside the blood cocoon, but he could see the changes in the blood cocoon itself. The originally soft blood cocoon had now become a hard shell. There were some faint sounds coming from inside, but they couldn't hear it clearly from outside. This movement lasted for almost a month, and the blood cocoon finally calmed down. Immediately, a crack suddenly appeared on the thick blood-colored hard shell. During this time, Yang Chen had been staying in the same place with everyone, and he did not dare to relax the monitoring of the blood cocoon. After discovering this change, he was surprised again. This was Xiao Tian finally completing all the bloodline stimulation and was about to show his true body. He just didn't know if this time it was a complete Yazi or an incomplete Yazi. Chapter 464. The blood cocoon finally cracked completely, and a small head popped out first. The familiar face, the familiar head, or the original head of Xiao Tian. Next, a long body swam out of the blood cocoon, winding, suspended in the air of the medicine garden. After Yang Chen's spiritual awareness explored it, his pupils shrank rapidly. Yazi, the head of a jackal and the body of a dragon, sure enough. That long body was clearly that of a complete dragon. Neat and beautiful scales, there were 4 dragon claws on the body, each dragon claw was 5 claws. The complete blood of Yazi has been completely stimulated. At the moment of seeing this complete dragon body, Yang Chen knew where the huge spiritual power went. Just to make the original body of Xiao Tian become the current appearance, the spiritual power needed was an incredible amount of spiritual power. As soon as Xiao Tian climbed out of the blood cocoon, he couldn't wait to bite the blood cocoon and swallow the fragments one by one. Then, as before, he was very comfortable to wrap his body around the bright ray sword and held the blood demon vine sword in his mouth. Yang Chen thought that Xiao Tian was going to rest, but suddenly Xiao Tian seemed to find something. He let go of the bright ray sword, let go of the blood demon vine sword and flew in a certain direction. When it flew up, it almost instantly touched the edge of the medicine garden. Because of the medicine garden, it could not come out. The long body was twisting in that direction, it seemed to be very anxious. When Yang Chen's spiritual awareness explored, he immediately found that in the direction outside, it was Shi Kuei and Xie Sha. Yang Chen has already made a move, and naturally everyone was awakened, and they all looked at Yang Chen in doubt. "What good things did you get over there?" Yang Chen suddenly asked. He was not polite at all, there was not the slightest attitude of the younger generation of the sect to the elders of the sect. "Nothing." Shi Kuei and Xie Sha answered almost at the same time. They didn't care about Yang Chen's attitude at all. Then it was Shi Kuei's turn to speak. "We have fought a lot with those big guys. They are very envious that we can transform into human form. After a few more fights, let old man Gui clean them up. Maybe we can pull some experts into the Hall of Eccentric." Demonic beasts at the nascent soul stage all had great intelligence. There was no doubt about this. Shi Kuei and Xie Sha now knew that because of their race, their starting point in the sect was always lower. Therefore, they knew that they should find some companions for themselves. Presumably, with Shi Kuei and Xie Sha's personal experience, plus the transformation skill, maybe they can really pull a few more Yuanying demon beasts for Chunyang Palace. However, this was all in the future. Right now, Yang Chen was interested in what they got from there. Xie Sha had already begun to shake the Qiankuan bag, and the things inside fell out in a pile. At a glance, there were actually more than 10 fragments of high-level puppet. This was not a living puppet like Wan Qian, but a high-level magic weapon that was refined and assembled with various materials, and then connected with a formation, using spirit stones or spirit-gathering formations to provide power. Could it be that Xiao Tian wanted this? Yang Chen was directly close to the 2 large fragments, but Xiao Tian in the bottle was still wandering around. It seemed that this was not what he wanted. Xiao Tian was not suitable to appear in front of everyone now. Yang Chen couldn't get it out and let it choose by itself. He could only look for it from the pile of things by himself. All kinds of beast bones, fur, and teeth, they were the bones left by the Yuanying stage monsters that had been dead for many years. If they were placed outside, it would definitely be a good thing for people to fight for. But for Yang Chun and Xiao Tian, it was almost useless waste, and they were not interested at all. However, these things directly made Gao Yu and Gong Sunling obsessed. The two women rushed up almost regardless of their image, and began to look at the bones of the monsters. After searching for a while, Yang Chun finally got a piece of flying sword fragment. Xiao Tian stopped twisting and waited for Yang Chun to throw the fragment in. After determining that what Xiao Tian wanted was these flying sword fragments, Yang Chun said nothing and began to look for all kinds of flying sword fragments frantically. He didn't know what happened to the original sect here. Shi Kuei and Xie Sha found hundreds of similar fragments. Yang Chun threw dozens of pieces into the medicine garden and then collected the rest. He took a piece in his hand and began to look at it carefully. A very old refining technique. He didn't know how many years it has been eliminated. This was the first impression of Yang Chun. Then, his spiritual awareness explored and shrouded the entire fragment. In his sea of consciousness, the enlarged picture of the fragment immediately appeared. By the standards of that time, the refining was good, but now in Yang Chun's view, there were still many areas for improvement. This was the inevitability of the development of the times, and the refining technique was also improving and changing. He couldn't see what was so special that it could make Xiao Tian so crazy. Yang Chun could only put away the fragment, and then his spiritual awareness explored the medicine garden and began to investigate the movement of Xiao Tian. At first glance, Yang Chun was surprised. At this moment, Xiao Tian's body was wrapped in the bright ray sword and the blood demon vine sword, but it did not hold any pieces of fragments. The fragments he threw in were all gathered in front of Xiao Tian at this moment. Subsequently, Xiao Tian made a move, and the next situation made Yang Chun couldn't believe his eyes. As if taking a deep breath, Xiao Tian took a deep breath at a piece of flying sword fragment. For a while, the flying sword fragment seemed to float a hazy light and shadow. As soon as the light and shadow left the flying sword fragment, like a white mist, it flew into the nostrils of Xiao Tian. After taking this breath, Xiao Tian seemed to enjoy it very much. He sat on the two flying sword fragments and narrowed his eyes as if he had begun to rest. That comfortable appearance, it was as if after eating delicious food, it was natural to want to sleep. This scene was completely seen by Yang Chun, and he was shocked in his heart. The hazy light and shadow on the flying sword fragment should be the spirit formed after a long time of refining of the flying sword. Perhaps it has not completely become a thing with spiritual wisdom, but this kind of spirit does exist. Even some advanced magic weapons would seal a powerful spirit, just like the heaven-seizing pill would have a pill spirit. Those hazy shadows were the artifact spirits that had yet to take form. Yazi could swallow the tool spirit, but Yang Chun never knew that even the unformed tool spirit in these broken magic weapons could be swallowed. Even Yang Chun suspected that this was the only way to make Xiao Tian mature. It was rare to see a magic treasure with an artifact spirit, but after a long period of refinement, there were many flying swords that carried such an unformed artifact spirit, and some of them even became a source of trouble for the magic treasure's owner. This time, Xiao Tian could enjoy it in the future. Chapter 465. The smile on Yang Chun's face was not hidden from everyone. Everyone stopped what they were doing and looked at Yang Chun. Senior apprentice Sister Gong Sunling even asked immediately, "What's the good news? You're so happy." "I found some good things, but you can't use them for the time being." Yang Chun didn't say it very clearly, but he didn't say it to the point of not saying a word. He just gave a general hint, then just smiled and said nothing else. Now that they couldn't use it, everyone suddenly lost interest. Sometimes cultivation can't be too ambitious. Being down to earth and moving forward step by step is the right attitude. Even if there is a good thing to ascend to the immortal world, it is also useless if you can't use it. Pack up, let's go back to the sect. Seeing that everyone had sorted out the things, Yang Chun didn't stay here for a long time. With a big wave of his hand, Everyone quickly put away the spoils of war, and then followed Yang Chen back to the hall. It was much easier to go out than to come in. Anyway, the cave was now under Yang Chen's control. With just a few simple techniques, it was easy to come out from the cave. It was still a vast sea, an empty island, and there were not many people around. Sitting on Yang Chen's shuttle, Yang Chen left the location to his master and senior apprentice sister. Because the control was in the hands of Yang Chen also taught them a few ways to get in and out so that they could come and go freely. This was a good place for combat experience. The only weakness was that it was a bit far away. If it could be completely collected and placed in a suitable place, it was not known how many people in the sect would be envious. Don't tell the sect about this for the time being. Gao Yu was the first to speak and put forward this suggestion. The sect has just changed dramatically. If there is such a stimulation, I am afraid some people will think too much. The human heart was the most unpredictable, everyone understood this, so they all nodded. Yang Chen didn't say much and the matter was settled. After another 3 months on the road, everyone returned to the Meiqing Mountain sect again. After not being in Meiqing Mountain for more than 2 years, Meiqing Mountain had undergone tremendous changes. Taking advantage of the last time, when all the buildings in the sect were destroyed, the head of the palace and several elders redesigned the mountain gate of the Chunyang Palace. It had become even more majestic and awe-inspiring than before. Even the division of the underground spirit veins had been reorganized. The Ardent Sun Courtyard's earth vein was also in the process of being reorganized. Compared with the original Chunyang Palace, it was now more than 3 times larger. Even the Scorching Sun Courtyard was enclosed within the sect. The huge building complex rose from the ground and spread over hundreds of miles. If it were not for the majestic size of the main hall, Yang Chen and the others might not be able to find the main hall in a short time. Not to mention anything else, just the temperament of the head of the palace had changed dramatically. 2 years was enough for the sect to firmly control the 100,000 mountains. The kind of confidence that the huge gains brought to the head of the palace made him already have some kind of bearing to compete with the world. Everyone knew that the benefits of the 100,000 mountains were amazing, but no one expected that the benefits of the 100,000 mountains would be so huge. Just in the first year, when they had not yet fully grasped the situation, the income was enough to support the ultra-loose operation of the Chunyang Palace for 10 years. The income in the second year was even more doubled. This was the result of sharing the spoils with the Green Jade Immortal Island Blue Cloud sect and the Beast Taming sect. It was conceivable how much wealth the backstage people had accumulated at that time. Unfortunately, it was said that such a huge wealth was spent by those guys to buy various elixirs to break through to the next realm. Otherwise, the spoils alone could make the 4 sect a lot of money. Even so, the 4 sect was already overjoyed. They were more attentive to the 100,000 mountains. Especially after the 4 sect imposed a rule that it was not allowed to rob and kill the same people in the 100,000 mountains, it attracted a lot of demons and monsters, and the benefits were more than when it was chaotic. Becoming such a headmaster, of course, the head of the palace was full of power, and his temperament had changed greatly. Several elders were also upright, and their faces were shining. Their state was completely different from when they were struggling at the end of the second-rate sections. Not to mention the high level, even the ordinary disciples of the Chunyang Palace now went out with their chests out and their heads held high. If they reported the name of the Chunyang Palace, their peers would more or less give them some face. Even the new disciples in the past 2 years had been recruited several times more than in previous years. Everything was going in a better direction, and Yang Chen was also very happy to see all this. However, when he met the head of the palace, Yang Chen was still complained a little. They had been gone for more than 2 years, and there was no news from them, which almost made the head of the palace and Wang Yong worried to death. Fortunately, they came back quickly, otherwise, maybe the head of the palace would offer a reward to find Yang Chen. "Palace Master, please forgive this disciple. In the face of the care from the elders, Yang Chen had to bow his head and admit his mistake before he began to explain. If the sect blindly protects the disciples, it is actually not good for the disciples. The tender seedlings in the greenhouse did not experience wind and rain. How could they be compared with the wild trees growing in the wilderness? Everyone understood the truth, but when it came to the important disciples of their own sect, it seemed that everyone had a very tacit collective forgotten this point. Yang Chen's meaning was that the sect did not need to care for him so much. After weighing it for a moment, the head of the palace finally nodded. No one wanted a genius disciple to become a waste because of their care. With the nod of the head of the palace, other elders were easier to convince, and even the ancestor Wang Yong could not say half a word. Yang Chen finally got the right to go out alone again. This time back to the sect, Yang Chen wanted to reassure the sect, and secondly, to fight for this opportunity for himself. To be honest, Yang Chen had never worried about the issue of safety. Not to mention the protection of the Dome Hall, just Wan Qian and her apprentice, 2 Yuanying stage masters, would not be a problem. What's more, Yang Chen still had the trump card of the Bloody River, but if it was not the last resort, Yang Chen would never use this trick. Going out to experience is also good. This time I should take the little girl of the Blue Cloud sect out, so as not to let the Blue Cloud sect gossip. The head of the palace nodded, but when Yang Chen left, he once again reminded Yang Chen about the handling of Sun Qingxue. What Yang Chen was most afraid of now was to hear about this. Last time, his master Gao Yu actually wanted to bring Gong Sunling in. When he heard the head of the palace mention this again, he hurriedly promised and fled, and never dared to look back. He just came back and went out again. It was not that Yang Chen did not want to stay in the Chunyang Palace. It was because the blood of Xiao Tian had been fully stimulated. Yang Chen could not wait to go to the Dragon Palace treasure house to see if the blood of Yazi could unlock some of the seals. Chapter 466. Everyone had been fighting in the Immortal's cave for 2 years. It was a good time to come back to digest these combat experiences and improve their cultivation base with peace of mind. No one said much. They returned to their respective rooms and began to cultivate. Yang Chen did not plan to take everyone with him. The Dragon Palace treasures were of great importance, and it was Yang Chen's Immortal's cave that he planned to carry with him in the future. It must not be easily known by others. If his master wanted to experience again, the position and techniques were taught to them. They could go at any time. There was no hindrance with or without Yang Chen. Anyway, Yang Chen was just practicing and reading the jade slips in the palace every day. He had never seen him go out and fight with the monsters. Of course, Yang Chen did not abandon his cultivation. He persisted in practicing every day for a week. It was just that in the eyes of others, only practicing one day was indeed a bit lazy. But everyone knew that Yang Chen's specialty was alchemy, so no one urged him on his cultivation base. This time, when he returned to Chunyang Palace, the sect also gave him a little surprise. In more than 2 years, the sect has received hundreds of kinds of fire seeds, which were different from what Yang Chen had absorbed before. This time, not only were there first and second grade low-level fire seeds, but there were also 2 third-grade fire seed. Some people were even willing to exchange the 4th grade fire seeds for a questioning inner heart pill in Chunyang Palace. However, this was obviously too low and was directly rejected by the palace master. A questioning inner heart pill, even if it was to be exchanged, at least a 5th grade fire seed like the Sun True Fire and Moon True Fire must be exchanged. A 4th grade fire seed was not enough. Yang Chen was not polite and accepted these fire seeds. With his contribution to the sect, it was natural to get these rewards and he would not feel guilty at all. Of course, no one at the top had any objections to this. He said goodbye to his master and only said that he was going out to find a place to cultivate and absorb the fire seed. Gao Yu also thought that Yang Chen did not want to be bothered by trifles in the sect and did not stop him. Gao Yu also knows that Yang Chen is strong, and recently cultivated the yellow turban strongman body refining technique. His strength has greatly increased, and she is not afraid of any safety problems for him. However, he still warned him to be careful. Speaking of the yellow turban strongman body refining book, Yang Chen's sturdy body, after returning to Chunyang Palace, shocked the head of the palace and several elders. Although transforming into such a sturdy body was not something too shocking, the first impression that flashed in everyone's mind was that Yang Chen wanted to use this image to make sure Shanshan and Sun Qingxue give up. It had to be said that this was an extremely absurd guess. However, Yang Chen's attitude has always been incomprehensible to everyone. Whether it is Fairy Sure of the Green Jade Immortal Island or Sun Qingxue of the Blue Cloud sect, they all have a big background, a good appearance, and a good cultivation aptitude. Such a good thing, Yang Chen unexpectedly avoided it. When her master left, she gave Yang Chen another batch of robes, which she and Gong Sunling made while waiting for Yang Chen. It's just that the fur of those monsters is relatively low level and not worth refining carefully. This time, Gao Yu also found some bones and fur of the Yuanying stage monsters from the spoils of Shi Kuei and Xiesha, but those could be used to refine some good protective robes. Yang Chen left Chunyang Palace, and did not leave directly by shuttle, but first went to the market of Meiqing Mountain to see the recent situation of Shanghai Feng. Shanghai Feng was obsessed with business, but his cultivation base has increased compared to the last time they met. This made Yang Chen have to sigh that Shanghai Feng was really a person suitable for doing business. Knife Scar came once and brought back a lot of good things. Shanghai Feng's business was flourishing. It seemed that in the entire market, there was no place with more people than Shanghai Feng's small shop. Seeing that everything was on the right track, Yang Chen was also secretly happy. After communicating with Shanghai Feng, Yang Chen walked out of the market, raised his flying sword and flew in the direction of the East China Sea. Around the market, Yang Chen did not want to be so shocking, so he did not directly use the shuttle. But soon Yang Chen began to smile bitterly. In front of Yang Chen's flight, a group of people suddenly appeared. Looking at their cultivation base, most of them were in the foundation establishment stage. There were one or two in the gold core stage. They were all elegant, and all of them looked like the kind of handsome young master. They seemed to know that he was going in this direction and stopped Yang Chen. Lightly hovering in the air, Yang Chen slowly landed on the ground, put away the flying sword, looked at a group of people and others faintly surrounding him, but his face remained calm and asked, "Fellow Taoists, why are you stopping me?" A person jumped out of the crowd and stared at Yang Chen. It seemed that he was not sure. Suddenly, he saluted and asked, "Are you Yang Chen of Chunyang Palace?" "I am." The other party saluted, and Yang Chen did not mind being polite. He knew why the other party was not sure. His figure had changed too much, and it was indeed unbelievable. "I am Triple X, and I challenge fellow Taoist Yang." "I am Triple X, and I would like to challenge fellow Taoist Yang." As soon as they confirmed Yang Chen's identity, more than a dozen people suddenly spoke in unison, which made Yang Chen stunned. He heard clearly that these people were all here to challenge him and compare note. Yang Chen frowned immediately. So many people wanted to challenge him, but there was no reason? Moreover, Yang Chen had never been very interested in this kind of competition. At the moment, he could only be patient and asked with his fists clasped, "Fellow Taoists, is there any misunderstanding between me and you?" "There is no misunderstanding." The young man who came out first seemed to be sure that it was Yang Chen, and his attitude also changed. "Fairy Sure must not be your Taoist companion. I challenge you. If you lose, don't pester Fairy Sure anymore." He was also an admirer of Shi Shanshan. Yang Chen's heart was even more troubled. He didn't say much and just said loudly, "Let's compare notes. I am not skilled enough, and I admit defeat." When the group of young talents heard Yang Chen's words, they were instantly dumbfounded. They originally wanted to defeat Yang Chen face to face and make him lose face. They didn't expect that Yang Chen would take the initiative to admit defeat. What should they do now? You. Fairy Sure is as pure as ice and as clean as jade, and she was actually deceived by a cowardly guy like you. Immediately, someone shouted loudly, "How can you surrender without a fight? I am not skilled enough, and I can't even admit defeat." Yang Chen didn't want to be entangled with these talents. He smiled slightly and raised his foot to leave. "I have already admitted defeat. Please let me pass." "No!" The young man who came out first shouted again. "I have long heard that Yang Chen of Chunyang Palace never compares notes. Today I have finally seen it for myself. In that case, Yang Chen, I challenge you to a life and death battle." Chapter 467. Life and Death Challenge. As soon as these words came out, the young cultivators around were shocked. They looked at their companions, thinking that they had heard wrong. "I will duel with you to see who is worthy of Fairy Sure." When the young man saw that his companions were looking at him, he puffed out his chest and put on a posture of facing death calmly. "You and I have no grievances. How can there be a duel of life and death?" Yang Chen shook his head. "Sorry, I don't have time." It was unknown if the other party was so hot-blooded that he even brought up a duel of life and death. It seemed that he had heard of Yang Chen's several duels of life and death. Yang Chen was not so bored that he would make an enemy whom he didn't know the details of. Besides, it was really not worth it to be jealous for a woman. "No grievances?" The other party suddenly sneered. "My senior brother came to Meiqing Mountain to challenge you a few years ago, but now his whereabouts are unknown. Didn't you kill him?" In this world, death is a very common thing. Not everything must be blamed on me. Yang Chen just sneered. "A few years ago, the mountain gate of my sect was destroyed. I don't know how many people were buried in it. If you want to blame someone, blame those who destroyed my sect." The person who stood up was speechless. The destruction of the mountain gate of Chunyang Palace was not a secret. At that time, many people had been to the scene to see it. It was a disaster that even the mountain protecting formation could not protect it. It was common for people to die. Maybe his senior brother was killed in that disaster, but Chunyang Palace had already said that it was done by Shirwan Mountain, and they had already united several major sects to destroy the backer of Shirwan Mountain at the same time. It was not so easy to have a relationship with Yang Chen. However, if a person was foolish and wanted to court death, then even the heavens would not be able to stop them. When the man heard Yang Chen's words, he was stunned for a while and suddenly said loudly, "If it weren't for you, why would my senior brother come here? I didn't invite anyone." Yang Chen sneered, and was already a little impatient with these people. "If you have nothing else, then forgive this Yang for leaving." The group of people looked at each other in dismay. They had originally planned to humiliate Yang Chen by challenging him, so that Yang Chen would take the initiative to leave Fairy Sure. However, they did not expect that he would take the initiative to admit defeat, so they did not achieve their goal at all. Although Yang Chen admitted defeat, no one felt that they had won. With one look, one could tell that Yang Chen didn't care to bicker with them. On the contrary, this made these guys who thought themselves to be outstanding very angry. How could such an admission of defeat be considered admitting defeat? "Give me back my senior brother's life." The guy who spoke first could no longer restrain his hatred and shouted at Yang Chen. His friend wanted to stop him, but it was too late. Just now, Yang Chen had already made it clear that it had nothing to do with him. It was very unwise to insist on getting involved with Yang Chen. Everyone knew that Yang Chen's reputation as an alchemist was like the sun in the sky. If they defeated Yang Chen in a spar, no one would say anything. After all, he was an alchemist, so it was normal for his cultivation to be insufficient. But if they insisted on fighting to the death with Yang Chen, so many people did not have the guts to do so. First, even if they won, they might not be able to get Fairy Sure. Instead, they would provoke countless experts who wanted to ask for pills from Yang Chen. If they lost, it would mean death in a life and death challenge. No matter what the result was, the loss outweighed the gain. It has nothing to do with me. Yang Chen simply ignored the other parties shouting and turned to leave. This guy was unreasonable. There was really nothing to argue with a madman. That person's friend had just breathed a sigh of relief, but he was suddenly horrified to find that his friend had actually taken out the flying sword and stabbed at Yang Chen's back without saying a word. The group of people did not make a sound. They seemed to be stunned by their companion's action. Launching an attack without saying a word, this was a sneak attack. Aren't we going to defeat Yang Chen in a dignified manner? When the flying sword was almost about to pierce Yang Chen's back, Yang Chen's figure suddenly flashed. Originally, his back was facing everyone, but suddenly he turned to face them. He stretched out his hand, and with a swoosh, he grabbed the flying sword that was stabbing at him. Grabbing the flying sword with his bare hands? The group of people's eyes almost popped out. How was this possible? But the situation in front of them made them unable to believe their eyes. Their companion's flying sword, which was shining with light, was pinched by Yang Chen. It kept trembling between Yang Chen's two fingers, but it was unable to break free. On his companion's face, there was already a look of struggle, and beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. It was just a blow, and it could not be considered a life and death struggle, but his companion's forehead was actually sweating? How was this possible? But the truth was happening in front of them. The most terrifying thing was that Yang Chen had nothing in his hands. If he had worn a pair of gloves or a glove, it would make everyone understand. It was just a magic weapon against a magic weapon, to see who was better and who was worse. But Yang Chen actually pinched his companion's flying sword with his bare hands. This was something that a human could do? If Yang Chen was an expert of the original infant stage or above, this would not be surprising. The huge difference in cultivation could also make up for the difference in physical body and magic weapons. But Yang Chen was obviously the same as everyone else. He was also at the foundation establishment stage. He grabbed the flying sword with his bare hands, and his companion's flying sword technique could not even break free. Could it be that this was Yang Chen's true strength? While everyone was guessing, Yang Chen had already made his next move. The opponent had launched a sneak attack, and it was obvious that they wanted Yang Chen's life. No matter how good Yang Chen's temper was, no matter how much he did not want to argue with these guys, he could not tolerate it. At the same time that he grabbed the flying sword, Yang Chen's face turned ashen. He stared fiercely at the owner of the flying sword and suddenly said loudly, "Every injustice has a perpetrator, every debt has a debtor. You and I have no grievances in the past, and there is no hatred between us. Today, you actually want to take my life for no reason. I can only offend you." As soon as his voice fell, Yang Chen's hand exerted force. Under the stunned gaze of everyone, the flying sword in Yang Chen's hand was forcibly pinched into two pieces by Yang Chen's 3 fingers. What was this? The group of people was shocked by the scene in front of them, and they could no longer speak. Using a flying sword to cut the flying sword, this was acceptable to everyone, because there were high and low quality flying swords. Using other magic weapons to break the flying sword, everyone could also accept it, because some magic weapons were heavier and harder. But using fingers to pinch the flying sword like pinching a snail, and then easily break it into 2 pieces, what was this? Yang Chen's fingers. Was it a high-level magic weapon? Yang Chen did not give the owner of the flying sword a chance to make another move. He stretched out his big hand and directly grasped the body of Xiao Tian in the medicine garden. At the same time, the bright ray sword under the control of Yang Chen flew directly into the mouth of Xiao Tian. Chapter 468. Xiao Tian seemed to have understood what Yang Chen was going to do, and he obediently let Yang Chen do it. When the hilt of the bright ray sword entered Xiao Tian's mouth, Xiao Tian's body suddenly began to change. The dragon-shaped body wrapped around Yang Chen's hand, and then directly turned into a golden sword hilt. With a big mouth, the hilt of the bright ray sword was swallowed, and then the mouth closed, and the blade of the bright ray sword was protruded from Shao Tian's mouth. The head of Shao Tian also became a hideous ghost head. On the blade of the bright ray sword, there was a layer of light that was almost invisible. If Yang Chen was not the owner of the bright ray sword and Shao Tian, he would not be aware of this change. With a clear and melodious sound of the sword, Yang Chen's bright ray sword finally appeared in front of everyone. However, the appearance of the bright ray sword did not surprise everyone too much. Everyone was still immersed in the shock of Yang Chen's 3 fingers breaking his companion's flying sword. Others didn't know that these people had been together for some time. Because of a common reason, they came to find Yang Chen's bad luck, and they also exchanged notes with each other on weekdays. The quality of the other party's flying sword, everyone knew it, even if it was not as strong as their own flying sword, it would not necessarily be weak. However, their companion's flying sword was so easily broken by Yang Chen, which also meant that their flying sword was unsheathed, and the result was not much better. This was still Yang Chen's own flying sword was not used, and he only used his body to resist. Suddenly, there was a sword in Yang Chen's hand, but it was different from everyone's sword attack. Yang Chen was actually holding it in his hand. Could it be that Yang Chen's sword technique was not good? As soon as this idea came out, some people began to be tempted. Especially the friend of the guy who had already started the fight. Since he had already started the fight, and Yang Chen had also broken his friend's flying sword, they had no choice but to fight. Why not take this opportunity to rush forward and kill Yang Chen? It would also fulfill everyone's wishes and give everyone a chance to pursue Fairy Sure. 2 flying swords silently appeared behind Yang Chen. They suddenly accelerated and slashed at Yang Chen. Naturally, there were people on the opposite side of Yang Chen who saw it, but no one said anything. Getting rid of Yang Chen also meant that they would have the opportunity to get close to Fairy Sure. Yang Chen sneered, as if he had eyes behind him. He waved the bright ray sword in his hand, and the 2 flying swords behind him were easily turned into 4 pieces. Under the blessing of Shao Tian's possession, the flying sword used by these foundation stage guys was not even better than tofu. The blade of the sword had not even touched the opponent's flying sword, and the sharp chi had already spread out in the air, cutting the opponent's flying sword in half. These 2 swords were the quasi-life source flying sword, refined by the owner of the flying sword. They were destroyed in one move, and the owner of the sword suddenly wailed. Yang Chen didn't care. His figure was like lightning, and he rushed to the side of the 3 people. With a sword slash, the 3 people became 6 pieces. Blood flowed all over the ground, and the internal organs flowed out of a large pool. By the time the people next to him understood what had happened, Yang Chen had returned to his original position with 3 Qinkuan bags. This series of actions happened in a flash, and the people didn't even have time to react. He killed fellow Taoist Wang. A scream of horror and horror suddenly sounded from someone's mouth. The voice of despair and horror seemed to indicate that the killed fellow Taoist Wang was a great character. Brush, almost everyone looked like they had seen a ghost, and they unanimously moved back, far away from Yang Chen, as if Yang Chen was some kind of plague. Unexpectedly, the only 2 Jedon stage masters among these people were still standing in the same place, but their faces were cold, as if they were facing a life-and-death enemy. "You dare to kill the young master?" One of the Jedon stage masters almost squeezed out this sentence in a tone of grief and indignation. "Hand over your life." The other Jedon stage master didn't say anything and directly started to move. Needless to say, this must be the guard of the young master. They just didn't expect Yang Chen's action to be so fast that they couldn't stop it. At this time, they could only kill Yang Chen to ask for the master's forgiveness. The attack did not fall in the surroundings, but the imposing manner of the Jedon stage masters had already appeared overwhelmingly. The talented people in the foundation stage next to them couldn't bear it at all. After exclaiming, they directly scattered and fled. Everyone knew that the two Jidon stage masters were now red-eyed. The crime of failing to protect the young master was enough for them to die. Before dying, the two Jidon stage masters wouldn't care that they were the friends of the young master when he was alive. Maybe they would vent their anger on them, or maybe they would go down to accompany their young master. After Yang Chen's next goal, maybe it would be them. No one dared to stay for a long time, and they all scattered. Fleeing in panic, naturally no one would pay attention to what happened behind them, and no one would know that at the moment they turned their heads and fled, 5 veiled women suddenly appeared beside the two Jidon stage masters. The 5 women appeared without a sound, but their attacks were strange and unusual. They didn't know how many times they had cooperated with the 5-way Mystic Fairies formation. Almost at the moment when the 5 women appeared, they wrapped the two Jidon stage masters in the formation. Boom! A more violent Jidon stage aura made those who fled frantically run faster, wishing that their parents could give them an extra leg. They didn't dare to look back, let alone use their spiritual awareness to explore. Such a terrifying scene. When the spiritual awareness came over, there was no other result except injury and shock. The two Jidon stage guards had fallen into despair. A moment of carelessness, they let Yang Chen kill the young master. Now, the sudden appearance of the 5 Jidon stage masters also let them know that it was already an extravagant hope to kill Yang Chen to avenge the young master. It was still unknown whether he could survive or not. But before the two of them died, they couldn't figure it out. It was obvious that Yang Chen was just an ordinary disciple. Even if he had the potential of a senior alchemist master, why would Chunyang Palace send 5 Jidon stage masters to protect him? This was even tighter than the guards of their own young master. However, it was impossible for them to get the answer to this question. Under the siege of the 5 women's 5-way Mystic Fairies formation, in just a few face-to-face encounters, the two Jidon stage masters were each penetrated by 5 flying swords. With unwilling eyes, they died in front of Yang Chen. Boring challenges, meaningless life and death, Yang Chen didn't know how to evaluate these people. However, if the matter of Shi Shanshan was not resolved for a day, presumably such a thing would not end in a day. Who made the name of Shi Shanshan Fairy to be famous in the Dao sects, and countless people wanted Shi Shanshan to be a dual cultivation companion. What made Yang Chen puzzled was that as soon as he came back, someone came to the door immediately. If there was no problem, Yang Chen would never believe it. Were these people all bored, waiting for Yang Chen to appear in Meiqing Mountain? Chapter 469. Meiqing Mountain Market did not restrict outsiders and rogue cultivators from entering, so it was normal for someone to monitor it all the time. However, it was very abnormal to have such a group of young masters who had nothing better to do and only knew how to fight for a woman's favor. Unless someone used some excuse to gather them together, such as Fairy Shi, to challenge Yang Chen, etc., and they were still talking about a common topic, and in the end, the hatred was attracted to Yang Chen. The guy who stood out first was obviously instigated by someone else. It was said that the most important thing for these young masters was their face. Yang Chen admitted defeat in front of them and gave them enough face. At least most of them did not want to follow up. But that guy jumped out and also took the initiative to attack Yang Chen. It was clear that he wanted to threaten everyone to attack together, so that Yang Chen could kill a few people in the chaos and cause trouble for Yang Chen and Chunyang Palace. Unexpectedly, his move was destroyed by Yang Chen's 3 fingers, suppressing most of the people. There was no way around it, only 2 other guys could do it, including a young master surnamed Wang. As a result, he was killed by Yang Chen with a sword, which led to the current situation. In any case, Yang Chen killed people. Those who escaped would definitely publicize it. Even if Yang Chen hunted down those people, there would still be people who spread the news that Yang Chen killed people. For this, Yang Chen didn't care. He was worried that these guys hiding behind him would harm his master. Fortunately, Yang Chen would not go out for too long. He would go to the Dragon Palace treasure house to see if Xiao Tian's dragon bloodline could unlock some of the seals and get some more things. That shuttle alone has saved Yang Chen many times and has also brought a lot of convenience to Yang Chen. This was still the simplest thing that could be unlocked. Those things that were more difficult to seal could be imagined what kind of goods they were. At the thought of that series of treasures, Yang Chen's heart was itching for a while. The shuttle shuttled quickly. Yang Chen has also found that with the improvement of his own cultivation, the flying speed of the shuttle has also become faster. When he was in the early stage of foundation establishment, he obviously did not have this speed now. When he arrived at the seaside, Yang Chen directly controlled the shuttle and plunged into the sea and never showed up again. Regardless of whether someone was tracking him or not, Yang Chen really did not believe that anyone in the sea could catch up with the current speed of the shuttle. The dark and deep seabed was calm and dangerous, but with the high speed of the shuttle, Yang Chen didn't care at all. The monstrous beasts that could catch up with the flying shuttle did not have strong strength, and if they had strong strength, they did not have the speed of the flying shuttle. Yang Chen knew this from the last time. It would take more than 10 days to reach the treasure vault of the Dragon Palace. Yang Chen adjusted his direction and began to cultivate on the flying shuttle. Perhaps it was because the surrounding environment had suddenly changed a lot after entering the bottom of the sea, or because of the obstruction of the deep sea. Some people had to pay a higher price to track Yang Chen. Yang Chen suddenly sensed that someone seemed to be tracking him. How was this possible? Unless it was a master of the Desheng stage, even Wang Yong could not track Yang Chen without Yang Chen noticing. But now, it was obvious that there was a powerful spiritual awareness that was tracking him. After realizing this, the first thing Yang Chen had to do was to immediately explore his body to see if there was any spiritual awareness mark or something. After checking it, he confirmed that there was no such mark on his body. Yang Chen was a little disappointed. If the other party planted a spiritual awareness mark on him, he could easily use the bloody river in his sea of consciousness to deal with him. Although the bloody river was now quenching the immortal beheading blade, Yang Chen did not need to mobilize the bloody river to deal with the spiritual awareness mark, as long as the spiritual awareness mark was thrown in. The last time Guan Yueying was tossed around by Yang Chen, she fainted directly in the process of chasing Yang Chen. The master of the Yuanying stage was captured by Yang Chen, a junior in the early foundation stage. This was still the case where Yang Chen did not kill her. Once Yang Chen was aware of the hostility, it would not be as simple as fainting. If it was not on his own body, it should be something of his own. Yang Chen began to thoroughly check his own items. The Pure Bottle Medicine Garden and the Dome Hall were in the Merit Ring. Yang Chen did not think that there was any master in the mortal world who could penetrate the Merit Ring to track him. Moreover, the Pure Bottle Medicine Garden has always been the most important magic weapon of Yang Chen. After sacrificially refining it several times, he has never found any spiritual awareness tracking. The profound spirit furnace was even more impossible. Now the profound spirit furnace has been completely branded with Yang Chen's mark. Even if someone else gets the profound spirit furnace, it is impossible to use it. The level of fire control has not reached the level of Yang Chen. The direct consequence of using the profound spirit furnace was that countless flames would be out of control, and then the person and the profound spirit furnace would turn into ashes. The only result of someone putting the spiritual awareness imprint on the profound spirit furnace was that the spiritual awareness would be burned by the Sun True Fire, the Moon True Fire and the Nanmingli Fire, and directly become the same fool as Wan Qian. Moreover, the profound spirit furnace has always been in the Merit Ring. It was impossible. The Bright Ray Sword and the Blood Demon Vine Sword are now in the Medicine Garden, together with Xiao Tian. The unformed sword spirit inside has already been swallowed by Xiao Tian. If the spiritual awareness imprint was made, it would be a delicious meal for Xiao Tian. The shuttle was very likely. So far, Yang Chun has no way to sacrifice the shuttle. He can only mark his own spiritual awareness imprint. However, even if he wanted to do this, it took Yang Chen at least half a month. You must know that the strength of Yang Chen's spiritual awareness was already at the level of the middle Yuanying stage. If others want to make a spiritual awareness imprint, it's not just a touch. So far, the shuttle has been freely controlled by Yang Chen, which can only explain one thing: the shuttle has not been forcibly marked. In addition to these most important things for Yang Chen, those ordinary things were placed in the Qiankuan bag that Wang Yong refined for Yang Chen. When Yang Chen checked it one by one, he soon found the problem. Several Qiankuan bags, to be exact, were the Qiankuan bags of the few guys that Yang Chen killed not long ago, including the young master and his 2 Jedan stage guards. On each Qiankuan bag, there was a tracking spiritual awareness imprint. This was not surprising. Usually the big sects had a tracking array that could find the disciples of their own sect. This was a safety protection and a way to prevent any accident. It was normal for the young master and their Qiankuan bags to have this kind of tracking mark. What was abnormal was that the few people killed in the beginning were obviously not from the same sect, but the tracking marks on their Qiankuan bags were all the same, which was a bit strange. This could only explain one thing: those people, even those who ran away, were simply given to Yang Chen to kill, in order to be able to track the whereabouts of Yang Chen. Chapter 470. If it weren't for Yang Chen entering the bottom of the sea, separated by heavy seawater, the other party had to increase the intensity of exploration. Otherwise, Yang Chen would not have been able to find out that the other party had such an arrangement. Killing the enemy and getting the spoils of war, this was everyone's habit, and Yang Chen was no exception. It was estimated that the opponent would make such an arrangement based on this idea, and even encouraged a lot of young cultivators who had ideas about Shi Shanshan to come to trouble Yang Chen. As long as Yang Chen killed a few, he would definitely fall into this trap. And as long as Yang Chen killed people, those people could declare it to the outside world. Not to mention making a few enemies for Yang Chen, they could also pull in allies for themselves. The other party may not have dreamed that Yang Chen's spiritual awareness would be so powerful that he could actually discover the trace of the other party's spiritual awareness imprint, which was almost undetectable by the Yuanying stage masters. Knowing that someone was playing tricks, and after careful analysis of this spiritual awareness imprint, Yang Chen found that it turned out to be the same person, so he was not in a hurry to erase this spiritual awareness imprint. Knowing that there was an enemy and knowing which enemy, these were completely different concepts. Yang Chen was not willing to break the clue that he had found. Carefully exploring the spiritual awareness imprint on a certain Qiankuan bag, he wrapped it completely, gently controlled it, and pulled it into Yang Chen's sea of consciousness, just on the edge of the bloody river. He could throw the spiritual awareness imprint into the bloody river at any time. After confirming that there were no other tracing imprints, Yang Chen wrapped the spiritual awareness imprint tightly with his spiritual awareness imprint. There was no possibility for the other party to trace it. Next, Yang Chen rummaged through all the Qiankuan bags, and then directly put the things inside into his own Qiankuan bag, and then threw out a few Qiankuan bags when he met a powerful monster. In just 2 days, all of them were thrown to the side of the monster at the bottom of the sea. He believed that the other party suddenly lost the trace of Yang Chen and would always come to check. He didn't know what kind of expression they would have when they met the powerful monsters at the bottom of the sea. After Yang Chen came out from the Dragon Palace, he would have some fun with these people. Now, Yang Chen didn't want to accompany them. It was not easy to stimulate the dragon blood of Shao Tian. Yang Chen couldn't wait to see what he could get. The treasure vault of the Dragon Palace was still the same ordinary seabed rock. After Yang Chen cast a detailed and complicated incantation, he finally entered the treasure vault again. Sure enough, as Yang Chen expected, as soon as he entered the treasure house, Shao Tian began to twist crazily again, as if he wanted to come out. There were no outsiders here, and Yang Chen immediately released Xiao Tian. At this time, Xiao Tian no longer looked like a puppy. He had the head of a jackal and the body of a dragon. He looked exactly like Yazi. After turning into a dragon, Xiao Tian no longer walked on the ground, but flew in the air. There seemed to be something in the Dragon Palace treasure house that was attracting Xiao Tian crazily. Although the small body was not flying fast, it was flying forward unswervingly. Yang Chen followed Xiao Tian unhurriedly and looked curiously at the direction of its flight. After flying for a while, Xiao Tian finally struggled to the top of the huge sea map. It seemed that Xiao Tian was already very tired. He landed directly in a place where the spiritual vein was shining on the sea map and began to rest. At the same time, his head turned to Yang Chen and he seemed to be looking forward to something. Yang Chen thought a little and took out a few pieces of the magic weapon fragments found in the Blue Vault Mountain Immortal's cave and sent them to Xiao Tian. Xiao Tian really wanted this. He opened his mouth and sucked hard. The mist on a few pieces of debris appeared again and entered the mouth of Xiao Tian. And those fragments immediately lost their luster and became ordinary fragments. There was no magic weapon aura. Yang Chen did not throw these things away, and still threw them into his Qiankuan bag. These were all good materials. Although the magic weapon was broken, the materials would not be broken. After resting for half a stick of incense, Xiao Tian regained his spirit and flew up again. This time, he flew directly into the hall. Seeing Xiao Tian enter the hall, Yang Chen followed and watched Xiao Tian directly rush to the huge dragon bead on the throne in the middle. Yang Chen looked forward to the figure of Xiao Tian, looking forward to the appearance of the restriction next to the dragon bead. Bang! The figure of Xiao Tian flying forward directly hit an invisible barrier, making a bang sound and fell to the ground. Yang Chen spit out the breath that was held because of nervousness. He sighed in his heart and shook his head slightly. It seems that Xiao Tian is also facing the problem of Yang Chen. His cultivation base is not enough. He can't get recognition at all and the restriction can't be opened. After having this concept, although Yang Chen was disappointed, he was not desperate. His own cultivation base was too low. He was only in the foundation stage. It was the same everywhere. He was a low hand. It was normal to not be able to unlock the restriction. If it was really unlocked, it could only mean one thing: the restriction was not strong, and behind the restriction was not a good thing. Xiao Tian was very anxious. He kept circling around the dragon bead, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't get within 3 feet of the dragon bead. However, the bloodline of Xiao Tian looked really pure. The dragon bead flashed a few times, and it seemed that it sensed the dragon aura on Xiao Tian. But it was only a few flashes. The weak descendants of the dragon clan could not get the recognition of the dragon bead. Yang Chen grabbed Xiao Tian in his hand and passed a thought. Xiao Tian quickly calmed down and no longer continued to wander around the dragon bead. He quietly coiled on Yang Chen's arm, and his small head was placed on the back of Yang Chen's hand, motionless. It seems that it also understands that its current strength is weak and it is not enough to get the dragon bead. After comforting Xiao Tian for a while, Yang Chen walked towards the 8 jade cases. The jade case with the shuttle was already empty, and Yang Chen began to try to reach out to other jade cases. Perhaps it was really the dragon bloodline of Xiao Tian that played a role. The jade case that had a small golden bell before, Yang Chen couldn't put his hand into it, but at this moment it suddenly began to shine brightly. Yang Chen was overjoyed, and the right arm of Xiao Tian moved forward again, and soon touched the original barrier. Yang Chen knew that it was the restriction on the jade case, but now there has been a little change. At the point of the tentacle, the invisible barrier was softened a lot. This discovery made Yang Chen surprised and happy. What made Yang Chen even more surprised was that Xiao Tian began to open his small mouth and suck the light little by little. Chapter 471. Just after sucking for a while, Yang Chun found that the barrier closest to Xiao Tian's mouth on his hand had become softer. This was simply an unexpected surprise. If Xiao Tian could suck up all these things, it meant that Yang Chun could easily get the things on the jade case. Thinking of this, Yang Chun couldn't hold back his excitement and began to communicate with Xiao Tian with the beast controlling secret art, so that it could try to suck up the light at his hand. In that case, maybe he could quickly make a hole with the thickness of an arm, so that Yang Chun could reach in and take out the golden bell. Xiao Tian also understood Yang Chen's meaning, but in the actual implementation, there was still a deviation. Of course, this couldn't be blamed on Xiao Tian. It was really that the bright light seemed to be able to flow. After a while, the surrounding light began to supplement the loss here, and the barrier began to slowly harden. It seemed that this was a painstaking effort. Yang Chun could only wait slowly, and at the same time, he was guessing what the golden bell on the jade case was. This wait was a whole month. Xiao Tian seemed to be very fond of this kind of light, it was simply absorbing it all the time. Yang Chun knew that there must be a lot of dragon qi in it, otherwise Xiao Tian wouldn't be like this. Almost every once in a while, Yang Chun would try to touch the restriction on the jade case. When he found that the invisible barrier was getting softer and softer, and the surrounding light was getting lighter and lighter. At the moment when the light finally disappeared, Yang Chen's hand couldn't wait to reach into the barrier. The originally strong barrier, at this moment, seemed to have become a soft membrane, and it would be broken with a gentle poke. Yang Chen's hand grabbed the golden bell, and then quickly retreated. Who knows if there will be any changes in this restriction, it's better to get the things first. The small golden bell looked like a golden bell that was shrunk countless times. The outside was an unusually exquisite bell cover, covered with exquisite dragon patterns. If one were to take a closer look, they would notice that there were 9 golden dragons circling around the bell outside. Each of them had different shapes and sizes, and they were all baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. However, every single one of them was beautiful and lifelike. Inside the golden bell, there was a metal ball hanging from an unknown material. The ball also had this exquisite pattern, but it was not in the shape of a dragon, but a regular pattern. Holding it in his hand, the golden bell was very light, as if it had no weight at all. Yang Chun tried to shake it. Unexpectedly, the ball in the golden bell did not move and did not make any sound. This was not surprising. If it could be easily shaken, it would not be worthy of the old Dragon King's caution. It was something that the old Dragon King had solemnly placed in the treasury and had even sealed it with a restriction. It would not be worth the old Dragon King's caution. Curiosity still prevailed. Yang Chun began to try to input spiritual power into the golden bell. However, as soon as Yang Chen's spiritual power entered the golden bell, it was like a clay ox entering the sea, disappearing without a trace. Usually, there was only one situation, and that was the difference between the amount of spirit power input and the amount of spirit power needed was like heaven and earth. Only then would such a situation occur. After estimating the total amount of his spiritual power, Yang Chun had to admit in frustration that even if he input all his spiritual power into the golden bell, he would not be able to meet the needs of the golden bell. However, there was a map of the East China Sea outside. On the huge map, there were countless spiritual veins that could provide Yang Chun with a steady stream of spiritual power. Yang Chun didn't even think about it and directly rushed outside, then found a seabed spiritual vein that was not used by any sect, and put the black jade praying mat on it. Sitting on the black jade futon, Yang Chun held the golden bell with both hands and began to input spiritual power into the golden bell. With the input of spiritual power from Yang Chun, the size of the golden bell began to get bigger and bigger. Slowly, Yang Chen's hands could no longer hold it easily. He had to put the golden bell in front of him and touch it with both hands. As the spiritual power poured into the golden bell became bigger and bigger. When the golden bell became a head taller than Yang Chen's body, Yang Chun found that something was wrong. He could not control the speed of his spiritual power output. The spiritual power in his body seemed to be swallowed by a black hole, madly pouring into the golden bell from his hands. The spiritual power in his whole body, in less than 100 breaths, was completely absorbed. Fortunately, Yang Chen was still able to control the absorption of spiritual power. The powerful spiritual sense, the huge spiritual vein, and the black jade futon provided the possibility of this crazy absorption. In addition to maintaining himself to absorb the spiritual power of the black jade futon, Yang Chen could not do anything else. As soon as the spiritual power entered the body, it was directly swallowed by the golden bell and could not be left at all. Fortunately, Yang Chen's Yin-Yang 5 Elements secret art provided 10 times the spiritual power and 10 times the absorption speed of the ordinary foundation stage, making it possible to supply the spiritual power to the golden bell. Yang Chen now began to regret it. This level of magic weapon was definitely not what he could use, but curiosity made Yang Chen fall into this state that he could not get rid of. In addition to the crazy absorption of spiritual power for the needs of the golden bell, there was no other possibility. What made Yang Chen more and more afraid was that as the golden bell absorbed more and more spiritual power, the speed of absorption was getting faster and faster, and gradually there were signs of being unable to supply. If the speed of his spiritual power absorption couldn't keep up with the speed of the golden bell, wouldn't he soon be sucked dry by the golden bell? The surface of the golden bell began to slowly brighten, and the dragon patterns became clearer and brighter. The dragon patterns on it seemed to have begun to slowly bulge, becoming like a relief sculpture, like 9 golden dragons that were slowly inflating. Yang Chen's spiritual power absorption finally reached the limit, and he could no longer provide a faster spiritual power absorption speed. The golden bell seemed to be able to feel the state of Yang Chen, and the speed of spiritual power absorption was maintained at this rate and no longer changed. Suddenly, there was a flash of light, and Yang Chen seemed to see the dragon eyes of the dragon facing him flashed slightly. When he was wondering if it was an illusion, the golden bell suddenly stopped absorbing spiritual power. Just when Yang Chen was surprised, Yang Chen only felt a slight tremor of the golden bell. A low and heavy bell sound came from the golden bell. The huge sound was mixed with a terrifying shock. At such a close distance, Yang Chen almost instantly blacked out, and the whole person fainted. On the sea where the treasure house was located, a huge ripple suddenly appeared, followed by a bang and countless waters splashed. Within 100 miles, all the creatures lost consciousness in an instant, and even the seabirds flying in the air fell down. Chapter 472. The huge ripples formed waves that were dozens of feet high and began to spread in all directions. After a long time, the sea slowly calmed down, but there were already countless kinds of fish and shrimp with white bellies on the sea. When Yang Chen woke up, he didn't even know how long he had fainted. He only knew that there was no pain in his whole body. His whole body's spiritual power was empty, and there was no trace left. And in his sea of consciousness, it seemed that there was still a heavy and clear bell sound, lingering endlessly. Although it was said that he woke up, he only regained his consciousness. His mind was still like a raging sea, and he was dizzy. It was impossible to even concentrate. Yang Chen could only lie on the ground powerlessly, slowly waiting for natural recovery. At this time, Yang Chen, not to mention taking the medicine, it was impossible to even control the spiritual power. The power of the golden bell could be seen. Maintaining such a muddled state for at least 3 days, the shock in Yang Chen's sea of consciousness finally slowed down to a point that Yang Chen could accept. Enduring the crazy tremor, Yang Chen began to control his own spiritual power and heal. For several days, he didn't eat or drink, lying on the spiritual vein, but he couldn't get any spiritual power supplement. If it weren't for Yang Chen's strong physique, he would have fainted again. The spiritual power slowly entered Yang Chen's dry meridians and began to slowly moisten Yang Chen's body. After a while, Yang Chun finally had some strength and sat up with his arm. The first thing he did after sitting down was to take out 2 mysterious yang fruits from the herb garden and swallow them into his stomach. The huge supply of spiritual power, coupled with the full feeling of food in his stomach, made Yang Chun feel a little better. After the spiritual power of the profound yang fruit was completely absorbed by Yang Chun stopped and began to practice the 3 purities secret art. There was still a lingering sound in the sea of consciousness, and Yang Chun himself was still dizzy. If he didn't eliminate this effect, the efficiency of his practice would be too low. The 3 purities secret art was worthy of being the cultivation method of the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord. After only cultivating 1 cycle, the feeling of shock had been greatly reduced. Without any hesitation, Zhang Xian continued cultivating. After 81 cycles of the 3 purities secret art, it took a full 2 days and 2 nights. There was no tremor in the sea of consciousness, and his mind was restored to clarity. At this time, Yang Chun cultivated the yin-yang 5 elements secret art a few more times, frantically replenishing his lost spiritual power. The golden bell was still the same after it was enlarged. It was placed not far in front of Yang Chun, but Yang Chun did not dare to move it easily. Just that one sound almost made his soul fly away and scatter, and Yang Chun could be sure that it was not the full power of the golden bell. Moving around in such a situation was courting death. Yang Chun still doesn't know the situation outside the Dragon Palace's treasure house. The ordinary creatures within 100 miles were all dead. Even the monsters below the foundation stage were all dead. Those above the foundation stage were all unconscious. Until now, after waking up, they still couldn't distinguish between north, south, east, and west. There were stumbling monsters everywhere. It's really powerful. Yang Chun looked at the golden bell that was taller than himself, and could only make such a sigh. No wonder the old Dragon King would put it in the treasure house. It had such power without fully launching it. After fully launching it, what would it be like? Speaking of it, Yang Chun was only slightly affected. After all, the sound of the bell was launched by Yang Chun's spiritual power. It could be regarded as the initiator of the attack. The attack of the magic weapon would not hurt the owner. This was common sense. But just the impact had already injured Yang Chun so much. He didn't know what would happen if he really faced the enemy who attacked. Such a good thing, Yang Chun was almost happy in his heart and couldn't wait to put it in his pocket. However, if it was just put into the merit ring, it was really not reconciled. Yang Chun still wanted to try to collect it, at least like the shuttle. He had to leave his own spiritual awareness imprint. In any case, Yang Chun did not dare to input a drop of spiritual power into the golden bell. Fortunately, the spiritual awareness imprint did not need the support of spiritual power. As long as the spiritual awareness was strong enough, Yang Chun still had an advantage. Sacrificial refining? Yang Chun didn't even think about it. He sat directly on the black jade futon and began to collect the golden bell. At this time, the powerful sea of consciousness and the huge spiritual awareness played a role and began to penetrate the entire golden bell bit by bit. Even with the 3 purities secret art as the source of the spiritual awareness, it still took Yang Chun half a month to complete this most basic collection step. When Yang Chun's spiritual awareness imprint was successfully engraved in the golden bell suddenly turned into a golden shadow and hid in Yang Chun's body. Boom! Countless chants poured into Yang Chun's mind like a burst. After a while, Yang Chun determined that these were the chants of the golden bell. As long as he followed these chants, he would be able to control the golden bell without any injury. However, the spiritual power required to control the golden bell was not what Yang Chun could imagine now. At least until Yang Chun reached the peak Yuanying stage, he didn't have to consider this problem. Even if he reached the peak Yuanying stage, it was not so easy to make the golden bell ring completely. At most, it would be like this time, barely ringing. If he wanted the 9 dragons to fly together and the golden bell to ring, he would have to consider it again. However, before that, the golden bell was not completely useless. When the golden bell was integrated into Yang Chen's body, it had already opened a natural protective barrier for Yang Chen. It was equivalent to having a powerful protective magic weapon around Yang Chen's body, which could protect Yang Chen at any time. After discovering this in Yang Chen's mind, a word naturally emerged: Golden Bell Shield. This was simply the real Golden Bell Shield. With the power of the Golden Bell, even if Yang Chen stood still in the dome and let the 7x7 flying sword of the 7 steps enchanted killing formation cut at will, Yang Chen would not have any problems. This was only the power after Yang Chen had just collected the Golden Bell. After several sacrificial refining by Yang Chen, the power of the Golden Bell would be even stronger and its defensive power would be doubled. The most powerful thing was that after Yang Chen completely sacrificially refined the Golden Bell, the enemy's attack would even trigger the Golden Bell to ring and be directly counterattacked by the Golden Bell. Such a magic weapon with both offensive and defensive capabilities, even if it was in the Immortal world, it was also a rare good thing. This trip to the Dragon Palace with Xiao Tian really did not disappoint Yang Chen. This Golden Bell alone was enough to make Yang Chen pleasantly surprised. What's more, in the hall there were 6 jade tables, still waiting for Yang Chen to open the barrier one by one and collect the magic weapons inside. Now, Yang Chen was more and more looking forward to what the rest of the good things were. Chapter 473. Excitedly running back to the hall, Yang Chen tried to let Xiao Tian open the restrictions of the pagoda. Unfortunately, this time Xiao Tian couldn't do it at all, and there was not even a little light flashing outside the pagoda. Either the level of Xiao Tian was too low, or the level of the restrictions was too high. There were only these 2 reasons. Yang Chen could only turn to the next thing, the jade case with 2 long horns. Unfortunately, the restriction on the 2 long horns still didn't show any signs of movement. He tried one by one, and when he reached the side of the gourd, the jade case had a reaction. There was another light, but this time it was not a white light, but a blue light. Xiao Tian was obviously happy, and he enjoyed the light in big mouthfuls, as if it was delicious. Yang Chen could feel a trace of dragon qi from those lights, which was a natural tonic for Xiao Tian. For Yang Chen, it also meant that he could once again get a treasure that made people excited. The gourd that was solemnly placed on the jade case looked inconspicuous. One side was big and the other side was small. It was not symmetrical at all. The whole gourd showed a kind of dark yellow that seemed to have been picked for a long time, and there were many mottled shadows on it. At first glance, he didn't know how many years it had experienced. In the middle of the gourd there was a red rope tied to the slender waist, which was very casual. He didn't know what was inside that could let the old Dragon King put it here. The swallowing of Xiao Tian was not in a hurry, and Yang Chen also waited patiently, while quietly cultivating the 3 purities' secret art. After the sound of the golden bell, Yang Chen's spiritual awareness had some feelings of being shaken, and he had to cultivate madly to condense it. Half a month later, the restrictions around the jade case where the gourd was placed was once again swallowed by Xiao Tian. Yang Chen had been waiting for this moment for a long time, and he couldn't wait to grab the gourd and bring it to his eyes. The gourd was not big, and it was just right for his hand to hold the slender waist. That part seemed to have been scratched frequently as well. It was polished smooth and even glowed brightly. It was very comfortable to hold. Holding it in his hand, the gourd seemed to have a little weight, but it was not very heavy. With a gentle shake, one could even hear the crashing sounds coming from inside, as if something was not full. Yang Chen immediately placed his other hand on the mouth of the gourd. What was stuffed into the gourd was the tip of the original gourd. When put together, it was a whole gourd with a small handle. Yang Chen stretched out his hand and exerted some force. He was startled. He couldn't open the bottle gourd. This was normal. It would be strange if it could be easily opened. He was probably not worthy of the old Dragon King's attention. However, with the lesson of the Golden Bell last time, Yang Chen did not dare to input spiritual power casually. He still went out and found a spiritual vein position on the sea map and sat down. He began to use the old method to mark it first to collect it. The powerful divine sense of a mid-stage nascent soul cultivator was enough to collect the gourd. But it still took Yang Chen half a month to successfully mark his own spiritual awareness in the gourd. Just like the Golden Bell, when the spiritual awareness mark successfully entered the gourd, a series of chants entered Yang Chen's mind directly through the spiritual awareness mark. In an instant, Yang Chen knew how to control the gourd. What surprised Yang Chen was that this gourd turned out to be just a container, which made Yang Chen almost unimaginable. Just a container, was it worth the old Dragon King to put it here so solemnly? Could it be that the Qianquan bag was not enough to put things in this gourd? However, although it was only a container, there were still some differences from the Qianquan bag. This gourd could only store liquids, and it had a very powerful function. Different liquids could be stored separately, and they would never affect each other. The owner of the gourd could pour out whatever liquid he wanted. This was not the most exciting function of this gourd. The most important function was that no matter what liquid was put in, it would be affected by the effect of the gourd itself, and become more and more mellow and aged. If this was the case, then this gourd was simply a beautiful wine gourd. Think about it, the wine that you brewed, put it in the gourd to become more and more mellow and mellow, what kind of taste would that be? Of course, it was not limited to wine, there were other things such as heavenly fragrance liquid that could also age. What did aging mean? Increase the age. As long as the liquid was put in this gourd, it could actually increase the age unknowingly. Was there anything more wonderful than this? Yang Chen couldn't wait to open the gourd, and when his spiritual awareness explored it, he immediately found that there were only two liquids inside. It was a kind of incomparably dense and glowing amber light. The other was a purple liquid, which exuded a little fluorescence, which was very beautiful. The amount of these two liquids was shocking. Each of them was like a huge lake. The liquid that was shaking the gourd outside was like two giant lakes. With Yang Chen's knowledge, of course, it was easy to preliminarily judge what these two liquids were. However, when he saw such a huge amount, Yang Chen was not sure. He found a piece of jade, and quickly spun it into a jade cup with the flying sword, and placed it in the profound spirit furnace. After a simple burn with the sun true fire and the moon true fire, Yang Chen picked up the gourd and gently poured out a drop of amber thick liquid from the gourd. As soon as the liquid entered the jade cup, it instantly exuded a wonderful taste. Smelling this smell, Yang Chen stood directly in place. This taste, it turned out to be the taste of the most mellow wine. How was this possible? The reason why Yang Chen was not sure was that there were too many lakes in that huge lake. How many raw materials were needed to brew so many wines? Just by smelling this mellow smell, he knew what kind of precious raw materials were used in it. Countless cultivators could fight for a lifetime, but here in the old Dragon King, it was just raw materials for wine. How could this be tolerated? What made Yang Chen most unbelievable was that this treasure house had been here for tens of thousands of years. Coupled with the aging and mellow effect of the gourd, how delicious would these wines be now? Yang Chen could hardly guess. Perhaps the jade nectar that the heavenly court entertained the immortals was just like this? It was even likely that it was not as good as these. It must be known that the rebellion of the heavenly court had only been a few years, and the new Jade Emperor had only been on the throne for a few years. With the practice of those old and stubborn people, they would certainly not leave any good things to the rebels. Even the current Jade Emperor, it was estimated that it was impossible to enjoy this level of wine. Chapter 474. After thinking of this, Yang Chen's mood suddenly improved. Although the tens of thousands of years of wine has become a thick colloidal distiller's yeast, Yang Chen still raised his neck and poured the drop of wine in the cup into his mouth. Feeling the unique delicious taste after the combination of saliva and distiller's yeast, Yang Chen was almost intoxicated. However, the powerful spiritual power contained in the wine woke him up from that intoxication. A line of fire rushed directly from his mouth to the soles of his feet and then rushed back to the top of his head. Then the line of fire turned into a cool feeling and once again walked back and forth in his whole body. This cold and hot alternated 9 times, and the whole body was more enjoyable than taking the most comfortable hot spring bath. Even a person with a strong will like Yang Chen felt as light as a swallow, floating like an immortal, and wished that he could never leave this comfort. It was just a mouthful, less than 1 tael, at most only the amount of 5 coins, but it made people feel like this. This taste, this kind of enjoyment, if Yang Chen was the old Dragon King, he would definitely put this in the most secret treasure house. With this lake of wine as the base, Yang Chen seemed to be able to accept that another liquid was the liquid he guessed. Purple, scattered fluorescence, these 2 characteristics were found in many things, but combined together, and it was a liquid, especially found in the old Dragon King's treasure house. It seemed that there was only one possibility: the 4 Seas mysterious coral liquid. There was no other possibility. The 4 Seas mysterious coral liquid was a kind of liquid secreted by the Millennium Black Coral in the North, South, East, and West Seas. However, this kind of liquid was extremely precious. Only when the Millennium Black Coral grew to more than 1,000 years old would it secrete a drop from its body every year. How many Millennium Black Coral could there be? Collecting a drop every year, how long would it take to collect a lake? Yang Chen's entire brain had been filled with shock. Even if he was reborn with the memory of the great principal golden immortal, he still couldn't maintain his calm. Not to mention the great principal golden immortal, even the old Jade Emperor who died under the immortal beheading saber of Yang Chen, it was not known how many years he had sat on the country. He was not necessarily able to have so many 4 Seas mysterious coral liquid. That is, the Dragon King, who was close to the water pavilion, did not know how many generations of efforts it would take to collect so many 4 Seas mysterious coral liquid. The 4 Seas mysterious coral liquid did not have much effect, but just drinking a little, it could fully and thoroughly wash the impurities in the body, making the body pure and flawless. Or he could add a little more to the alchemy process, which could slightly shorten the time of alchemy and also improve the quality of the alchemy pills. Otherwise, during the refining process, he would add something that would allow the various materials to fuse more thoroughly. Of course, cleansing the impurities in one's body was a process that would occur every time one advanced to the next realm. However, even when the Yuanying stage was promoted to the Deshang stage, the Yin fire tribulation could only remove 90% of the impurities in the body, and the 4 Seas mysterious coral liquid could remove 99% of the impurities as long as 100 jin was consumed. The Dao sects were okay, there were usually not too many impurities, but for many demonic cultivators and monster cultivators or some Dao sect's disciples who practiced special cultivation methods, they absorbed countless different things in the process of cultivation, which often led to physical problems. With the 4 Seas mysterious coral liquid, there was no need to worry about this situation at all. The shortening of the alchemy time was because the 4 Seas mysterious coral liquid was a very good neutralizer and catalyst, which could make most drugs integrate faster and would not cause a drug conflict reaction. With the 4 Seas mysterious coral liquid, the stability of the medicinal pill would be greatly improved. In this case, it was possible to carry out the 2nd grade, 3rd grade, and even higher grade refining. If Wu Xiong had this thing in his hand when he was refining the heaven-seizing pill, even the final medicinal pill would not be refined into a black mass. This was the difference. As for the refining aspect, it was also because of the neutralization and catalytic characteristics of the 4 Seas mysterious coral liquid. Even if it was a material of the 5 elements, under the neutralization of the 4 Seas mysterious coral liquid, there would not be a violent reaction outbreak, the success rate of refining was greatly improved, and more stable and uniform materials could be obtained. This greatly increased the effect of refining tools, and even allowed for cross-grade refinement. The magic weapon that originally needed to be refined in the yuanying stage, with the 4C's mysterious coral liquid, it was very likely that it could be refined in the Jedon stage. Based on the rarity of the 4C's mysterious coral, the price of a drop of the 4C's mysterious coral liquid in the market has exceeded a gene of high-grade spirit stones. As long as someone finds a cluster of 1,000-year-old black coral, they will definitely protect it like a treasure, unless they die, otherwise they will never let it go. You must know that this was just a drop. How much was the value of such a lake of 4C's mysterious coral liquid? Even if it was exchanged for the best spirit stones, it could crush Yang Chen to death. This was still 1,000 years old 4C's mysterious coral liquid. Yang Chen couldn't even judge how many years the 4C's mysterious coral liquid in this gourd was, but it would not be less than 20,000 years. It was absolutely there. Just collecting so much 4C's mysterious coral liquid was not something that could be done in 20,000 years. Such a huge wealth, in Yang Chen's previous life, there was no impression of it. It was estimated that it had never been born. And now, this wealth that even the heavenly court was estimated to be coveted, has already reached the hands of Yang Chen. After waking up from that kind of shock, the first thing Yang Chen did was to take the jade cup, pour out a drop of distiller's yeast, and then open it with the 4C's mysterious coral liquid. After greedily smelling it, he swallowed it in one gulp. This kind of delicious food should be enjoyed in time. With this kind of good thing, Yang Chen certainly would not forget his spiritual pet Xiao Tian, and also poured a cup of 4C's mysterious coral liquid. Removing the impurities in Xiao Tian also meant that the bloodline of Yazi was purer. After pouring it down, Yang Chen and Xiao Tian, one person and one spiritual pet, lay on the spiritual vein on the sea map regardless of their image, and fell asleep. This sleep was unusually sweet. This was a normal reaction after taking the 4C's mysterious coral liquid. No matter how high the cultivation base was, they would sleep for a long time. In their sleep, the bodies of Yang Chen and Xiao Tian began to ooze a trace of black liquid, greasy on the surface of their bodies. When he woke up, Yang Chen sat up and stretched out a big yawn. Since his cultivation, he had not slept so comfortably. He only felt refreshed and his whole body was unspeakably free.